In this section of the training, we're going to take a look at compensating for size and strength. We're going to start out with more of a general discussion of the principles and the strategies and the tactics, and then we're going to get into some very specific techniques that Emily uses all the time to deal with bigger people. But why don't we, one of the first things that we do, talk about some of the challenges that you face and that smaller people in general face when they're fighting bigger people,
Sure.
say like me or even bigger.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is there's only so many people that you have to train with in your school, right? So you want to learn how to train cooperatively with everyone. I think there's a lot to learn from training with people of different sizes. The problem is application of technique. A lot of the times the things that you learn, it's not that they're not useful, but you have to know when and where to apply them. For example, I don't like to play a lot of closed guard. I use it sometimes, but more often than not, I only use it on people that are smaller than me or the same size as me. I can't close my legs around someone like Stephan. It leaves me in a really bad position because what happens is a lot of the times when you don't know where to use a proper technique, you can't complete it. And then you start thinking, oh, this technique doesn't work. This whole game's really terrible for me. Because something like a closed guard, many of you maybe have assumed that position. And with someone your own size, it works really well. Somebody that's larger is just going to be able to, A, you won't be able to close your guard around them, or B, they're going to pass very easily and just sit on top of you. And I spent so many years underneath people, never being able to do anything. The other thing you worry about too is getting injured, right? Like, I don't think that I can bench press off somebody that's 250 pounds. It's not safe. It's not a smart thing to do. So when I think about what I like to utilize in my game, a lot of it has to do with space management. I don't want to let my partner get too close to me unless it's on my terms, right?
Well, just to jump back to the closed guard for a second though, you do see a lot of girls who specialize in the closed guard, in the armbar. They seem to be going for the armbar from the guard all the time. So what about that? I mean, there are a lot of girls who use
I think that the closed guard is an incredible way to play if you can play it. Unfortunately, my ancestors were probably rice pickers. I have very short legs. I can't close them most of the time. If I do close them, my close just isn't very tight and I have a very hard time getting my body up and doing anything. I have great training partners that have incredible closed guards, but they're also very long and lanky. So I think you also have to look at what you have physically that you can work with. And I have to work very hard for what I can do. I have to train additionally outside of jiu-jitsu in order to have the strength and explosiveness to do things. I'm not physically gifted. I'm not sure if, well, you're obviously somewhat physically gifted, you're very tall, you're strong. Maybe some of you guys out there have things that help you with your game. But for those of you that don't, there's a lot of techniques that you can use that can help patch the gaps, right? And those things have everything to do with strategy, thinking really smartly about how you're going to be moving around your partner and the types of things that you're going to be doing to unbalance them and actually get a move off. Otherwise, you find yourself always in a defensive position. And after, maybe a year or two of always being on the bottom, some people lose motivation. And that's something that I hope doesn't happen to you guys.
Okay. So now you suggested that one of the keys was space management. That sounds kind of theoretical and woo. What do you mean by space management?
So you have something like a closed guard, which is very close, right? You have your partner in tight to you and you're looking to unbalance them from that position. You want to manage their space by keeping them as close to you as possible.
Sure.
So here, I have Stephan inside my guard, and I want to be able to unbalance him because his hips are already trapped with mine, right? So from here, this is where if I can break his posture down, get my legs up over, I can start looking for arm bars, come here, I can go for a sweep. But nonetheless, if you see, all the movements have everything to do with my hips being very close to his body and attaching myself to him. Outside of the closed guard, you can start playing things like spider guard, right? I played this for many years. Spider guard is about trying to keep your partner off of you a lot of the times until you're ready to move them. So I like to think of this as, making a marionette puppet, right? I want to control my partner's movements using a very strong part of my body, which is my legs. My legs are going to be infinitely stronger than my arms. So from this position, I can go ahead and start setting different things up, come in for a triangle, stand here, I can look to start sweeping. But if you notice, unlike the closed guard with the open guard or a spider guard, I'm using the distance to unbalance my partner. You have other types of open guards where you can go into De La Hiva, where you're weaving your legs, but again, it's utilizing a stronger part of your body, right? The De La Hiva, I'm going to come in and I'm going to maybe link my leg up. This locks him out. I might be able to push him away. From here, I can pull him back. There's a lot of things that I can do. but you ultimately have to think about what's going to be effective over the long term, right? And I went through a major change over the last couple of years training with Marcelo Garcia, and one of the things that he really opened my eyes to was this idea of playing the butterfly or the open-seated guard. It's a very evolved game because you're playing with a lot of space, right? You're trying to manage the unknown, which is out here. But what I really like about it is it sets you up with a really good frame. It helps you get your hips right underneath your partner so you can unbalance them. And it makes a lot of use out of your hooks and your legs. So you're not only just playing with this idea of momentum, but it's this push and pull constantly, this game of unbalancing your partner. And why that's really effective for somebody that's much larger than you is you're throwing around a lot of weight. So if I sway you one way and then I sway you the other way, you have a much higher chance of falling. Rather than if I keep you close to me, you can sort of balance yourself. So another really important thing that I think people neglect to think about, because most of us are trained to start our live sparring, if you will, this way, is not butting heads with somebody that's just bigger than you, okay? You can't go brick for brick, you can't go eye for eye, it just doesn't work. And what I mean by that is I think the vast majority of us have learned to start training like this. All right, what's gonna happen to me now is not a good thing. Grab, and then Stephan's just gonna manhandle me. So, the sad reality is that no matter how much I want to put into it and no matter how much I think I'm going to get on top and I'm going to win, I'm just not. I suck, okay? I'm too small. You're much bigger than me. You're taller than me. So I'm already at a big physical disadvantage. So the idea here is, again, setting yourself up for success. Get yourself into a position where you can actually actively do something. Maybe that means that from here, I'm going to assume what you might think is a little bit more of a passive position, but at least from here, when Stephan goes to reach out, maybe I'm going to come here and arm drag him and come around and take his bag. But I can deflect a lot of the motion that he's giving me. I'm not just taking it on my head or on my body. So this is a really important thing.
So it's not butting heads.
It's not butting heads. If you want to be a little bit woo-woo about it, like the whole yin and yang, you know, absorb somebody's energy and give it back to them a different way. A lot of jiu-jitsu is about that. A lot of martial arts is about that. So when you're playing, don't think about trying to outstrength or outmatch your partner. You have to be clever. You have to think about what you're doing and how you're doing it. So again, a lot of that has to do with how you're setting yourself up for success.
And we'll specifically get to a bunch of examples here about that in a second.
Absolutely. Another major thing is framing. And when I mean framing, I'm not saying, you know, you have to always frame from the bottom of side control so that you can bridge. That, of course, is probably the biggest and most important frame that you're going to have. But I mean frame, like have a good foundation with the floor. Connect to the floor.
And show some examples, please.
Sure. So I keep going back to this position, but when I'm sitting in an open-seated guard, I want to make sure that my balance is not totally off and I'm wibble-wobbling all over the place. A good house is usually a house that has a solid frame, that has all the right parts in the right place, right? So when I'm here, if Stephan were to stand up and bear all of his weight down on me, it's going to take a lot of effort for me to go backwards, right? But a lot of that has to do with how I set my body up. So whenever you're playing, whether it be guard, escaping, you're looking to pass, make sure you have a really good connection with the floor and that you're very aware of where your base and your balance is. Super important, because if you're not sure of where your leg's supposed to be, if you're not sure of where your arm's supposed to be, it puts you at a disadvantage. It puts you in a weaker physical position. And unfortunately, as a small person, you cannot afford to have those types of mistakes. Everything matters. So be aware. Take the extra time to know whether your elbow should be here or down here, because it's going to make all the difference in your game. So another example of this framing, Stephan, is most commonly from an escape, right? So if I'm on the floor and you're mounted on top of me, when I say have a good frame, I mean if you don't have a good frame and your hands are just all over the place, what are you going to do?
Anything I want, pretty much.
Yeah, so you're going to start moving around. I'm just going to be defending, right? Mm-hmm. If I want to effectively think about escaping, I need to first worry about your hips. I don't want them creeping up. I need to make sure that your hips are on top of mine. So automatically, I'm going to go ahead and connect, again, to the floor. So I have my elbow tucked in. I'm also looking to make sure that my arms are at a good angle where I can apply a decent amount of pressure on you, so that with this, I can start moving myself back, right? If I don't have this here, or if my frame is weak and my elbows are in the wrong place, if you start pushing your hips up, I can't defend that, right? Mm-hmm. So again, the importance of the frame is knowing where things have to be staying aware of them and making sure that you have an intent and a purpose to keeping your arms framed out in a certain way close to the floor so that I can actually get somewhere.
So connecting to the floor or connecting to something solid is the principle of framing.
Yep.
And having your arms in a strong position, so not flared out, is having them your elbows close to your body.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you understand how your body moves, right? And that if I extend my arm in certain positions versus bending or flexing my arm in certain positions, I get different reactions. So when you're starting to learn certain vital movements like escaping or learning to pass, all these types of things, you've got to be certain of how your body's interacting with the floor. So we're going to go into this technique a little bit more in detail later on. But just to give you an example, when I'm looking to escape from mount, one of the favorite things that I like to do is I'll frame out closely on my partner's hip. I'm going to go ahead and trap and come through. All right? But the idea there is I need to be able to keep Stephan's hips away. So by framing out on his hips, making sure that my elbows tucked in closely to the floor, I'm able to have a little bit more strength there, as opposed to if my arms were up right around your waist, right? You would collapse my posture that way and I wouldn't be able to escape my hips. So one of the other things that I think is really important is setting up a system so that you're making your opponent come into your game as opposed to you assuming a passive position. I think a lot of smaller people, they're more dynamic, they're technical, so they start playing like a really great guard game. The problem with that is if your guard game is just to assume a passive position and let your partner sit in between your legs, probably going to power out of it pretty quickly, right? Might work on somebody closer to your size, but a larger person's definitely going to move away from it. So when I talk about setting up a game where you're making your partner come into your game, it's about making them uncertain of what you're giving them, right? So a lot of the times when I start playing, if I start with an open seated guard like this, you already know my guard is right here. But then you're trying to figure out, well, how am I going to step inside Emily's guard without her taking advantage? Because you know that this is my play area. Also, with an open type guard, you have this space that you're working with, not a closed space, right? Because this is limiting where you're going. So with an open guard, Stephan's going to be on his knees. He might stand up, right? But I'm forcing him to enter into my zone. This is a really powerful thing. Not just technically, but also psychologically, right? A bigger opponent is going to be a little bit afraid of stepping into your zone. And I actually had this with a student of one of mine. He was a 4-stripe white belt who came in to train for the summer, and he was actually a little scared to jump into my guard, so he would spend 5 minutes running circles around me, and I was like, man, you gotta come into my guard so we can actually play. And he was like, I can't. And I'm like, why? And he's like, I'm scared. And I'm like, scared of what? He goes, because I know you're gonna do something. So this is a really great trick you can use as well. Think about how you can one-up your partner by giving them a mental game to play, not just a physical one.
Okay. So you're talking about not letting them impose whatever kind of game that they are comfortable with.
For sure.
On you. So then, can you give us some more examples of this? Like, how does this work with grips, for example?
Well, with grips, again, whenever you're playing with that open entry, you're looking to always defend and set something up more advantageous for yourself. One of the things I really like to keep in mind with grips is always trying to get a 2-on-1 if I can. Obviously, Stephan's much bigger than me. If I grab him and sleeve for sleeve, he's going to outpower me, right? Anytime I'm able to grab and go 2-on-1, that's 2 of my arms against his 1 arm. This is going to be much more effective, much more dynamic, bettering the chances of me actually executing something. This also goes for the legs, okay? If Stephan's on his back and I'm in a position where I'm looking to pass, again, I'm here, this is going to be a bit difficult. I have to get past both of his legs. Maybe I have to strip some spider grips, whatever it may be. If I'm in a position where I can put 2 hands on 1 leg, this is a lot more powerful than this, right? So anytime I have the ability to put my whole body into something, I'm going to.
It's the fine art of ganging up on...
Pretty much. Ganging up on like Stephan's finger, maybe pinching your nose. I mean, all of it works. But the idea here is maximizing all the use of your body, right? You have a body, it's not that big, but it's still really useful if you know how to attack.
Okay, and that's why we did the entire section on grip stripping and grip fighting. So if people haven't watched that yet, there's a lot of detailed information on how exactly to stop your opponent from getting good grips on you and get good grips on your opponent. So make sure you watch that section if you haven't already.
A lot of the time, and I think I mentioned this before, if you're not the one to establish the positive grips, if you're not the one getting what you want, chances are your partner's going to get what they want. They're going to win the position or they're going to win the match. So everything matters. The point of contact matters. You can't neglect how you enter into a position. If you just accept the way somebody grabs you and then you say, okay, I'm gonna play and I'm gonna strip their grips or I'm gonna figure out a way to get out of their game, you're already having to be in a defensive position. You wanna be offensive. You already have the odds stacked against you, so better your odds by establishing things first. So the last thing I wanna talk about before we move on to some of the techniques is this idea of always pushing the pace. Really important. A lot of times if you watch high-level jiu-jitsu, or more advanced jiu-jitsu for that matter, you'll see that the smaller people tend to move really quickly and they're very squirrely at times, right? This isn't just because they feel like imitating animals, it's because there's actually a reason to it. And part of it is by being able to quicken the pace, being a little bit faster than your opponent, you can often get to a position and execute it much quicker than your partner can sort of see, right? So it's about strategy. The other reason why we do it is for the plain and simple fact that if you allow your partner to stagnate your energy, because you're already outweighed and because you're already going to be outstrength, you're going to be stuck in a very, very bad position. So if you're able to quicken the pace and move in and out of things a little bit more quickly, your mind is always on the transition. You're going to find yourself moving fluidly in and out of good and bad positions as opposed to being stuck in a really terrible position.
But just to be the devil's advocate, if you move fast and do lots of things, aren't you going to get tired?
Yes, you will get tired, but that's why we're in better shape, right? How many times have you maybe trained with a larger partner? I mean, this isn't to take away from larger frame people who can move really, really well. I mean, there's tons of athletes that do that. But you'll find that, you know, most of the time they'll get a little bit tired chasing around after you. But again, it's also psychological, right? If you're pushing the pace and if you're always moving faster, your partner's playing your game. You're not playing their game, right? They're having to keep up with you. So again, you use that psychological angle and just keep pushing your partner and run in circles around them. That's fine because they're always going to be grabbing, seeking, how am I going to stop this person? I need to stop them and smother them. Don't give them that opportunity.
Okay. I mean, I haven't used that same strategy on people who are bigger and stronger than me. And it's kind of like, if I just keep pushing the pace here for another 3-4 minutes, I know this guy's going to get tired. And when that works, that's great. And when it doesn't, I was probably going to lose anyway.
Yeah, but you know, an important lesson that I've always learned is that even when you're in a terrible position, you always have to keep trying, right? And the thing is, when you have a larger person's weight on top of you, the moment you stop the movement, the momentum basically comes to a halt. Their 250 pounds will come to a halt on top of your leg or on top of your body. Whereas if you're trying to transition and you're trying to move out of something, chances are maybe you're not going to get exactly what you want, but you'll be in a better position than you would be if you just stopped right underneath them. So I already touched a little bit on why I don't personally like to play the closed guard myself. And a lot of that has to do with, again, having extra space, places to go, places to direct your partner's energy so that it's not sitting directly on top of you. So one of the things that I always think about is wanting to have the angles and the flexibility to get underneath your partner, get around your partner. So for that reason, when I was introduced to the open seated guard, it was something that I really adapted to very quickly. It works for my body, but I've seen it work for a lot of other people's bodies as well. The basic setup of the position is that you are seated on the floor. Basically looks like the butterfly guard. You're making a lot of use out of your heels, but it's very important that you sit on the floor at a certain angle, right? Because you need to have the flexibility and also the balance to be able to get underneath your partner, move away, cut out to the side.
Show me what you mean.
So when we start in a position like this, I'm going to be face on with you. The important thing here though is with my setup, I want to make sure that my body is at an angle to the floor, that I'm not sitting at a 90-degree angle. If I'm here and Stephan pushes on my shoulder, I'm going to go all the way back, right? So when I set up this position, I want to make sure that I'm sitting with my head over my knees. My legs also, I'm not flat and flexible here, and I'm also not really narrow. I want to have my knees maybe at about 45-degree angle to the floor on either side. My hooks are active. My hands are already in front, okay? My hands are in front because I'm already prepared to grip fight. I already know from this setup that Stephan's going to try and enter into my guard. So I need to be prepared and ready to deflect all of those grips.
And just to jump back a sec, the reason you're tilting forward is to provide a strong angle that I can push.
Right, you guys saw in the last section that if I frame out like this, it's really hard for Stephan to just push me backwards. Big difference from if I sit up too straight. I think
In fact, that's my main way of passing the butterfly guard or the seated guard. When I'm fighting somebody like you, my first goal is to get you flat on your back and now start to work from here. So that's what you're trying to prevent.
Exactly. And so what I'm doing by sitting at an angle to the floor is I'm actually keeping this area of my body covered, right? Because I'm protecting it not only with my legs, but also with my hands. So I'm ready for Stephan's shot in.
Okay. What about, isn't it bringing your head closer if I want to try wrapping my hands around it to choke you with a guillotine or with a collar choke or something like
So
that?
I do that a lot as an entry. When I look to pass somebody's guard, if they leave their neck open, I'm going to go look for it, right? Whether it's just to psych them out or if it's actually to take it, I'm looking for this. This is what happens when somebody's hands are on the ground and they stick their neck out, right? That's why you need to have your hands in front of your face, right? If you have everything guarded right here, if you go in for the same grip, I'm going to start grip fighting, right? So I'm protecting my neck with my hands. Your hands always have to keep everything covered. It's really important because it prevents your partner from being able to access your neck. It also prevents your partner from being able to access your body. Also, when I'm seated in this position, as a blue belt, I tried to learn the butterfly sweep and I wasn't very successful. It probably took me 2 years. Probably shouldn't have. But part of that was because nobody really explained to me the distance that I had to have my heels at in relation to my butt, right? A lot of people learn and they don't understand the difference between this and this. So when you're playing, you need to sort of find the mid-range, right? I would suggest as an exercise, maybe you extend your legs all the way out, see how far you can go, and see how close you can go. And in those two ranges, find some place in the middle.
The Goldilocks principle.
Exactly, right in the middle, right? You want to find that comfortable area where you have enough momentum and power and swing to shoot your legs out if you need, pull them in, or pull them all the way in so that you can explode out. You don't want to be at a position where you're flat or you have nowhere left to go. The reason why the open seated guard is great is because from this position, I can attack my partner whether it's forwards or I can more likely go to the side, right? So whether I'm going to look for an arm drag and I'm going to cut out to the side, right? Or if I'm looking to maybe take my partner's grips, trap them, come in and I'm going to go for a butterfly sweep, it gives me a lot of angles and openings. I'm not only just playing with his right and left side, but I'm also playing with the inseam. And this, where my hooks access underneath his body, is where I'm going to generate a lot of power to get underneath you. That's where I'm going to set up a single leg X guard and X guard and look to sweep my partner. So another reason why the open seated guard works really well is because it gives me a lot of control with space management, right? I don't want to allow you to get too close to me or too far away from me. I want to be in control of that. So when I'm here, I'm at a comfortable range with Stephan. But if Stephan looks to stand up to pass, already here, I'm going to start getting my guard up a little bit, right? If Stephan starts to take a step in, first thing I'm going to do is make sure I block his leg, right? Or I'm also looking to start butt scooting, right? The butt scoot, we did this a little bit in the warm-up. You should be comfortable planting your fist on the floor and learning to scoot in or scoot back. And a lot of this comes into play because if Stephan's afraid of my guard and he starts stepping back, I want to be able to scoot in and catch him, right? But if he starts coming at me, I need to make sure that I'm going to be able to come back.
And you're using this hand as a range-finding device.
As a range, and I like to make sure that I'm posting somewhere close to his knee, right? Because from here I can sort of push his leg back and make sure that it doesn't come in closer to me. If his leg comes in really deep, this is where I might find myself in a little bit of trouble because I don't have that much space to move. So if I find myself this close, I want to butt scoot, maybe get my ankle in front, hand in front. Now, if you're in a competitive scenario, you like doing takedowns, or let's say you're even in a self-defense situation, you find yourself on the floor. This is where we make use, again, of a technical stand-up that we went over in fundamental drills, right? So we're here, we want to make sure that we have our faces covered, but we just plant our foot on the floor, we stand up, and either here, I'm ready to strike back, run away if it's a self-defense scenario, maybe kick out, or if I'm in a competitive scenario, from here I can look to smack down, shoot in, go for a takedown. So one of the sweeps I want to start off with is something called the knee push. You have another name for it, I think, Stephan.
The idiot sweep.
The idiot sweep.
You catch somebody with this, they feel like an idiot.
If it doesn't make you feel like an idiot, you at least crack a smile, okay? It's a very simple movement, It's a lot of it's based on timing though, right? And you can actually, like Stephan said, make somebody look pretty ridiculous doing it. But nonetheless, it's really effective for either getting a big towering person to actually fall right over, or if anything, unbalancing your partner so that you can get into a more advantageous position. When I go ahead and I start assuming the open guard position and we start hand fighting, you're having a hard time getting in on me. So a lot of times your frustrated partner is going to go ahead and start to stand up to look to pass your guard. When you get into this position, you have a lot of space here that you're looking to manage, right? I don't want to let Stephan get in too close to me. I also don't want him to get too far away from me. So this is where a lot of the butt scooting motion comes into play. And it looks a little funny, it looks a little crazy. But if Stephan starts backing away from my guard, I'm looking to follow. If he starts coming into my guard, I'm looking to keep away. So what's funny about this sweep is you're kind of tricking your partner into falling into a trap, if you will. And I think the best time that I've ever used this sweep was when I had a student that was running around me and didn't want to get close to my guard, and I was able to keep scooting. And you have a little Asian woman that's chasing down this guy, and what does she do? She hooks her feet behind his ankles, pushes on his knees, and he falls right over, right? So it's a bit of a quirky sweep, if you will, but when you're performing it, the whole idea is the timing of getting your butt scoot in, getting your butt scoot back, and pushing, right? So here in this position again, Stephan's a little bit afraid of my guard. He's not really sure how to enter into it. Maybe he's tried to step in once or twice, and I block him. I come in front here, and then I start butt scooting. So I plant my fists on the mat. I'm looking to bring my butt to my heels, and each time I do this, I'm trying to keep my toes active and hook. So I'm going to widen my step here, right? So I'm planting my fists. I'm going to scoot in, and then my feet are going to come in and out. Once I get here, my feet are just going to be on the back of his Achilles. My hands are going to go on top of his kneecaps, and I'm going to pull my toes towards me, and I'm going to push him backwards. As I stand up, I want to make sure I manage his feet somehow, either hooking on the bottom of the heels or maybe grabbing the pant legs so that he can't plant his feet and sit back up towards me. I think it's important to note, guys, that when you're performing this sweep, it's not always going to look pretty, okay? There's going to be times where you're going to be moving back and forth. You might only even get one hook or one hand's going to be out of place, but the idea is persistence, and the real key here is your hooks. If you maintain those hooks and you put them behind your partner's Achilles and their heels, they're bound to step over, trip, fall backwards.
Even if you don't push them.
Yeah, even if you don't push them. It's just something that they have to now be mindful of, right? Because when somebody's trying to pass your guard, most of the time they're concerned with your upper body. They're not thinking that your feet are going to do anything. So it helps confuse them a little bit by not only giving something to think about up here, but also that they have to watch your feet. So we're going to go over the butterfly sweep. It's a sweep that I wanted to share with you because it's the entry into a couple other variations that you can use with the butterfly sweep. It's a good basic to intermediate level sweep that you're going to use commonly. If you're going to be playing hooks in any sort of in any parts of your game, it's something that you should definitely build in. It was something that took me a long time to learn. When I started doing the butterfly sweep, I've probably shown it when I was maybe a 4-stripe white belt, blue belt, and it was really challenging. I don't know if you found it challenging.
I struggled with it for a long time.
Yeah, it was, and I'm not sure if it was where technique was at that point in time, but nobody ever explained to me how I was supposed to use my legs or how I was supposed to frame my body to actually make it happen. So I spent a lot of years with people falling on top of me, me not feeling so good about myself, and I found a way for myself that I like to teach it. And like I said, this is going to set up some basic framework for some variations, okay? So when we look at our partner doing the butterfly sweep, if Stephan's faced in front of me, again, we're looking at this idea of his inseam or the inside of his thighs. I always want to keep my hooks active. Again, the important thing here is that I don't want to be too close to him and I don't want to be too far away. So like I said, when you extend your legs and you also bring them in really close, find the middle ground, okay? The middle ground for me is here, but I'm a little bit too far away from my partner. So I'm going to shuffle in and make sure that I can maintain that distance and feel good about it, okay? So once I'm here, the most typical way that we like to set it up is we're gonna reach around and go for the underhook. I like to grab behind the belt if I can. And what I also like to do is I like to sit out just a tiny little bit so that I can tuck my foot behind the other one, okay? So I'm no longer in the mode where like we did in the warm-up drill, I have both my hooks in. I'm gonna sit out just a little bit, open my hip up, and tuck my other foot behind my other heel. My outside hand is gonna come reach around, and I like to trap the outside of his elbow. The sleeve, if I trap it here, he can still move his hand out and post possibly. So that's why I like to grab the elbow where I can maybe pull and control, right? When I go in to do the sweep, I'm not falling backwards. And I think this is a huge mistake that
That's
I
exactly
say,
what I did
right?
wrong initially.
Yeah, I did it a lot too. A lot of people get this idea that in order to lift your partner, you have to pull them like this. But as you can see, I just end up with 220 pounds on top of me. So in order to avoid that from happening, I like to give people the analogy of driving a bus, right? You're sitting inside the driver's seat and you have a big wheel in front of you. You're looking to turn the wheel and you're gonna actually fall on your shoulder or your side. As you do that, you're also looking to post on your bottom leg, okay? So I'm just gonna show it to you once, then we'll break it down. So I'm here, I'm gonna turn the wheel, I'm gonna go to my side, and I sit through, all right? Now if I do that motion by myself, just so you guys can see, this is really important. So I'm gonna pull in, set up my distance. I have the underhook, I'm gonna sit out just a little bit, tuck my foot behind my heel. I'm gonna grab the outside of the elbow, and again, I'm thinking here about driving a big wheel, and I'm gonna fall on my shoulder. Watch the detail on my bottom leg as I post when I come over. I wanna be able to maintain this position, right? Because here I have control with my outside hook. That hook is what's ultimately gonna be lifting my partner. So again, with Stephan in front of me, I set up the distance that I want. If I need to move back or move forward, take the time to do that. Trap the outside elbow, tuck your foot in, and then we're gonna turn, post, and sit through. So a variation to the butterfly sweep that I like to use is using a little bit of head control, okay? There's so many different ways that you can execute a really beautiful butterfly sweep using the lapel and the sleeve, or like, you know, collar and collar. There's all sorts of different ways you can use a variation. But one thing I really like to do is I tell a lot of people to focus on the head as another appendage, right? It's a very powerful tipping point, especially when you have a larger partner in front of you. So this time in front of me, Stephan's gonna sit, right? A lot of the times you're gonna go in for a typical butterfly sweep and you're gonna go and your big partner's not gonna move because they're just bigger and stronger than you. So when I get into this position, what I do is I still maintain his elbow control, but my hand that was underneath and grabbing his belt is now gonna come up and trap around the side of his neck, okay? And if you guys look, I'm just sort of like mid-neck, right underneath the base of his skull. I don't wanna grab his shoulder, I don't wanna grab the top of his head. When I do this, I can start thinking about swaying Stephan's gaze and actually moving his body by using this part of his neck. So now when I go, I'm gonna sit through, all right? So this is a really great counter to when the typical fundamental butterfly sweep isn't successful. So I come in again, I try to sweep him, he doesn't move. I'm gonna switch to the head and finish the movement. I find that when I try this sweep and I use it against larger opponents, it's a little bit more successful than your typical butterfly sweep.
Do you ever do it just off the bat without tying the underhook first?
Yeah.
Does it come here and whang?
Absolutely. Definitely in situations where it's no-gi, right? Sometimes when I already don't have something to grab, so if the head is exposed, I'll just go ahead and grab it. The other thing too is sometimes based on how your partner is sitting in front of you, some people will sit very tall, and when they sit tall, I know that their base is a little bit further off. So I'll just go ahead and grab that, the neck. It's a bit of a surprise. Most people aren't expecting you to grab the neck. They're expecting you to grab their sleeve or their body. That's how sweeps are usually executed. right? So there's going to be times where you're being really stubborn and you're not coming off your knees. And you'll find sometimes you're going to go into the sweep and you're going to try it once, try it twice, and then you're thinking, I'm going to abandon the sweep because it's really not working. So one final tip that I can leave with you is that from here, if you find that your partner's not moving, you have head control, partner's not moving, the other thing you can look to do is to take your foot out from underneath your other one. You're going to plant it on top of your partner's knee, and you're going to basically perform the same sweep, but instead of just hooking and going over, you're going to really push on top of your partner's knee, kind of like taking the pedal to the metal, right? And taking their post out from underneath them. Now there is the argument that if it's very difficult for you to perform the sweep and your partner keeps resisting, you can actually move on to a different type of movement, right? And that's something else that's important when you're a smaller person playing a game. You can't get stuck on something for too long. If you overcommit, often it'll get you into a lot of trouble. So do it with speed, do it with a little bit of agility, see what's working for you. Take it if it's there. If it seems like it's more work, then it's move on, okay? The next thing that I want to go into is the single leg X guard entry. It's something I've incorporated into my game a lot. It's something that I think is a really successful guard for a smaller person because you are isolating a part of their body and you're also able to get underneath their hips. So Stephan, if you actually want to go ahead and set up. So before I get into a lot of detail about how we're going to get into the single leg X guard, I do want to talk about something because what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to switch the sides here. I'm going to ask Stephan to go on my opposite side. So I've been performing techniques to one side for most of this series so far, and the reason why I switch sides is because a lot of the times we think we're supposed to be learning everything 50-50. But when I started training with Marcelo Garcia, he introduced a new concept which was kind of interesting to me, and that was he likes to do certain moves to certain sides. So he believes in a lot of ways that if you perform something consistently to one side, you have a much better chance of executing it because you're spending more time practicing. Whereas if you spend 50% of your time going to each side, you might have a 50% execution rate. Now people can debate that, but for myself, it's actually worked out really well. So I have a particular entry that I like to use to the single leg X guard that I do with my left side. I won't necessarily do it with my right, all right?
But you have different answers for
I have different answers for the right side, and we'll go into that as well. So for the left side, when we think about starting out here, again, this idea of waiting for your partner to enter into your zone, right? This is really close for me. So before I let Stephan get this deep, I want to have my hands out ready to block. So when Stephan takes a step, I've already got his knee stopped, okay? This prevents him from getting so close that I can't really get in. Now that I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and swing my foot directly in front of his shin. So we're kind of crossed right here. When I get this close, I want to move myself closer to him and actually lock his leg towards me. So now I've tucked his leg and locked it against my body. From this point in, I'm actually going to go ahead and swing under. And when I swing under, I'm going to swing deep. And I'm actually going to load Stephan's leg on top of my body, just like this. So you guys can see just from there that his balance already got offset from me pulling him over me like that. A lot of ways, it's not expected, right? People are thinking, why would you just pull somebody on top of you? But the idea is that I'm going to swing my leg through and pull it up on his hip. So let's look at this position a little bit closer and in slow motion because it is difficult to understand if you've never seen it before. When you're playing the single leg X guard, you're basically looping your hips through your partner's legs, and one leg is coming out and trapping on top of the hip. When I come here, some of you guys may be saying, oh, well, that's a knee reap, right? For those of you that compete. The idea here is you need to be careful to keep your toes out, and you're going to use the pelvis as a ledge for your heel to hold on to.
Yeah, it's sitting right in here. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah. With my knees, I want to make sure that my knees aren't pointed away from me, but that they're pointed in the same direction as his. Knees are pinched together, my hips are high,
my hand is not just hanging out. I want to go ahead and grab behind my hamstring. This makes a nice little pocket for Stephan's foot, but I have a firm grip on it. If I'm over here, he can coast and move his foot around, right? That's not good. So, from this position, when you're thinking about how to lift your hips up, this goes back to our drill where we talked about making leg triangles, right? I want to lead with my hips. I don't want to lead with my legs. If I lead with my hips, it ensures that my knees and the rest of my body are going to come up and wrap around Stephan's leg properly. Right? So now that I'm here, I've trapped his leg. I'm going to take my hand, trap my hamstring, and now I have a good firm grip to begin thinking about sweeping. For Stephan, this is a bit of a difficult position because I've sort of isolated this leg, right? A lot of the times your partners may reach down and try and grab your lapel in order to try and stabilize themselves. This is where we can also use a stripping of the grips. We come here and you lift up, right? There's no reason why you can't do that. I still don't want him to stabilize, even though I'm on the bottom starting to play my game.
So I've got a couple of questions for you. When we start out with the instep position, and you come in close and you fall back, aren't you worried about me spearing my bigger, heavier, stronger knee through your chest?
Not so much, because I'm not just pulling you directly on top of me, right? If you notice, when I start to swing through, I actually come in at quite a deep angle, so I force your body to move with me. As a result, your base, your hand's going to go out to the side, and most of the weight's going to go into your hand.
They're not going to go here, they're going to go here.
That's the idea. I don't want to carry them, again, it's like the butterfly sweep. I don't want to go straight backwards. I want to dive under. So now, the weight is in your hands, not in your legs, right? This makes your leg light enough that I can come up.
So you fall, you kick, and then you clamp your legs.
Right.
So three-part movement. Now to a lot of people, they're going to see this position, they're going to go ankle lock.
Yeah.
You're trying to ankle lock. But you're not actually, that's not your primary focus, is it?
No, my primary focus here is I'm looking for a sweep. Okay. I want to set myself up into an advantageous position where I can get on top. There was actually a competition, I think it was the World Championships of Nogi last year, where I assumed this position on my opponent, and the commentator started saying, "Oh, Emily keeps going for this ankle lock hold, and they said it for a few minutes, and it was funny when I watched the playback, because I was like, actually, that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm setting it up for something entirely different. But we're going to get into more detail with that soon.
So you said you do different things on the right and the left. So now how do you get into it on the other side? What's your mechanism for getting into it off of my left leg?
So one of the things I really like to do here is, again, it's this idea of baiting your partner to give you something, right? So I often will set up from a butterfly guard sweep where I want to elicit a response from my partner. When I go to sweep them, Stephan's going to lift his leg. Very common. It's a much stronger stance for you. But for me, what this does is it gives me a hook. So what I'm going to go do is from here, I release my hook from behind my foot. I go ahead and I grab his knee, and I'm going to lift and assume the single leg to the opposite side. But you're giving me the opening because I'm eliciting that response from you. So just to give you a little bit more detail to that, again, when I set it up, I'm waiting for you to lift your leg, right? So when you go to base and lift your leg, now I'm here. His knee is very close to me. I'm going to go ahead and grab that knee, and I'm going to butt scoot in again. So instead of scooting in off the floor, I'm going to use his body. As I use his body, as my butt comes underneath him, I'm also looking to take my hands and lift his body further over my head so I can lift my legs over. Right? So my hands are based out on his rib cage to keep his weight up so that I can lock my legs through. Now, this funny move, like I do it a lot when I teach my students, and some of my students have now dubbed it the quack lock because I get a little bit of a clamp on their leg. But again, this entry is really nice. The thing that you really should be mindful of, though, is at no point do I ever relax my hooks, right? The whole time that I'm moving, I have to make sure that I'm generating a lot of momentum and kick from my hooks.
Well, I can feel the tension in the leg the whole time.
Yeah, and that's a really important word, tension. A lot of the times in jiu-jitsu, you have to work with tension. You have to ease the tension, you have to build it up. If you don't have that energy stuck somewhere inside your body, and you're doing things very loose, it's often very defensive and you're not going to be able to move forward.
So if I was to come at you like this, with my foot posted, without the sweep first, you could go into the same.
Yeah, I might just go right into it here, or if your partner's maybe a little less experienced, the other thing I'll do from here is I'll grab the lapel and I'll grab at the base of the heel and I'll just push them right over, right? That's something that's very simple.
Can I see you do the, from going here into the single leg X guard, please?
Sure, so from here, if my partner starts like this, and it's very common that they do, they think that this is a more defensive position where they're not going to get attacked. So I'm going to look to go ahead and grab the lapel, grab at the knee, and I'm going to butt scoot in really deep. So when I go ahead and I start teaching something like the single leg X guard, I really like to just separate the sweeps and all the different things that you can do from it from setting up the actual position. Because single leg X guard, unlike some other types of guard, is a little bit confusing at first, right? Many times I've seen people sort of tangle their legs up in the wrong way. So I like to separate those two things. So if you're going to go ahead and practice this, try and just practice the entries separately from the sweeps, because that'll probably reduce the confusion for you later. It's really important to build up your muscle memory here. Again, all that core going up and down, your hips and your abs are going to be hurting for a few days. I guarantee it. So let's look at single leg X guard sweep, right? So I'm just going to ask Stephan to stand up from here. Okay, we've looked at a couple different entries, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and, if you guys just want to practice the sweeps or you want to think about the dynamics, you're just going to thrust your hips through, and again, it's this butt scooting motion. And once I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and lift my hips, right? If it's not high enough, sit your hips through and come back up higher. You don't want to be, again, with your knees out to the side, or another common mistake I see is people that have this position here. So if you see, now I'm sort of at a diagonal to Stephan's body, I actually really want to be more straight on.
Harder to pull my foot out.
Yeah, right? There's a natural trap here. My tricep lies on top of your foot. My hand comes behind my hamstring, right? So the idea with the single leg X guard is you want to sway your partner, kind of like a big tree. And the way that we're going to do that is I want to start thinking about pulling my knees towards me and pushing them away and extending backwards. Okay? So that's the reason why I need to make sure that my knees are in the same line as Stephan's knee. Because if my knees are turned out, I can't really pull him down, right? So from here, I'm going to go ahead and pull him towards me. I'm going to extend away, pull him towards me, and extend away. The single leg X guard sweep is something that's probably not going to happen on your first try. And what I mean by that is when you go ahead and you set this lock up, your partner's going to adjust first and they're going to be trying to find their ground. When you go away to thrust, chances are they're going to compensate a little bit. So what you want to do is, again, elicit a response. Pull your knees back towards you, make your partner face forward. Now if you notice, all this section behind us, Stephan has no base here. Where he does have base is to my left, okay? So I don't want to go and try and push him this way. What I want to do is when I extend, I want to extend to where he has no base. So again, this is where this trap is really important. I don't want this foot to move. So I'm going to hold on to my hamstring. I'm going to extend far away from me. And that's where I'm going to come up with the sweep.
Now, is there any concern about twisting the person's knee? Because you're kind of going side to side. My knee felt safe when you did it there, but have you ever seen it go bad?
I've seen times people get a little bit crazy, maybe more of a beginner that gets a bit spastic. Again, it's a very unusual position for a lot of people. Most of the time when you pull it, and people have never seen it or felt it before, they kind of freak out. So there's two things that happen. 90% of the time, I think that people will try to base out and grab onto something. 10% of the time, somebody will maybe try and turn around and run away from you, right? You don't want to get into a position, especially with the gi, where things get tangled and the person's leg gets caught. So if it's a matter of training and I'm trying to help my partner or they're trying to help me, if I see ever at any point in training, it doesn't matter whether it's a choke, a sweep, they do something that looks a little crazy to me, I just let go and I let them run out of it, okay? I'm not trying to get injured, I'm certainly not trying to injure my partners. When you're dealing with somebody that's a lot bigger than you, obviously the potential for those kinds of accidents to happen goes way up. And a lot of the times you have to deal with, a larger person that's getting threatened by a smaller person. Sometimes brings out a very strange response in people, right?
Aggro.
Aggro, yeah. People will get aggro, they'll get very nervous, and they'll either try and smash you or they'll try and throw you in an odd direction, and you don't want to put yourself in a path of danger. So my big answer to that is if you see something funny happening, just let it go. It's just training. You'll come back another time.
Yeah, you can really feel the momentum of rocking side to side, like, oh, I'm unstable, but I think I've got this. I'm unstable, but I think I've got this. Oh crap.
Yeah.
Going over.
There's another thing that I like to incorporate with that sweep when people are being really stubborn or they have really good base. Let me show it to you right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and assume the single leg X guard. I go and I start trying to sweep my partner and they're not moving, right? So the next thing you guys can do, you still have this leg trapped, but with your other hand that's not doing anything, okay? This hand should be used to prevent your partner from making grips on top of your gi. So I want to deflect anything. But when I have the opportunity, right? When your partner bases and is able to hold their base, usually their leg is very close to you, okay? They're normally not going to base with their leg really, really far away. So when this leg is close to me, I'm going to take this hand after it's deflected a grip. I'm going to reach around and grab the back of his ankle, and then I'm going to thrust my hips straight up and away. And that's a variation to finishing that single leg. From another angle. So here, Stephan's not moving very much, right? I'm going to grab the ankle and I'm going to thrust up and away.
So Emily, a couple of questions if I may. The obvious what if things that come to mind. What if the guy's to base himself, to attach himself onto you?
So there's a couple of things. Before your partner actually makes grips, one of the things that you can think about doing is driving your heel, kicking it into the person's hip to just make them stand up a little bit taller. If they continue to come down, you have one hand that's free, so you want to deflect the grip. If they actually make a grip, this grip isn't as bad as this grip. If Stephan grabs me here, he's basically starting to collapse my position. So what I want to do here is I'm going to go ahead and do the same strip grip tactics that we worked on before. I either grab the sleeve here or I come here and I'm just going to strip everything up. When I use this momentum upwards, my hands are popping up towards the ceiling. My hips are also going to pop up a little bit too. And then from here, I'm going to go pistol grip and keep the hand away.
It's really tough to bring it back.
Yeah, and then from here, it's really good for me because I can come back and sweep him.
Now, the other what if, I think people are going to run into, is they want to get rid of this foot here, and that basically destroys your entire position.
Sure.
So what do you do?
So from here, I actually have a drill that I like to go to from the single leg into the regular X, right? Because you're still in a position where your legs are still underneath, or your hips are still underneath your partner. So if someone goes to go strip that grip, what I'm going to start thinking about here is dropping this foot to the other side, and with that stripped foot, I'm just going to reinsert it underneath, and then cap the knee, come underneath, and now I have the X guard. So from this angle, guys, we're going to enter into the single leg again. Once I'm here, Stephan goes ahead and starts to strip that foot away. I'm going to be mindful of this knee. I don't want it to step forward, so the hand's going to be out here. I drop my hook. My outside hook, the one that I lost, is going to come inside, right? Then I'm going to make sure I don't let this knee come forward over my head, so I'm going to trap it. My other hand comes deep inside, and now I have the X guard. Now what I really like about this position is that with a taller person, you're directly underneath their hips. Now, when you start playing for an X-guard sweep, if your partner is really good at basing out either way, I'm going to reverse the position and go back to single. So what that means is I'm going to always move my legs first, okay? That's the rule here. Never move your hands first, okay? So from here, I'm just going to go ahead and lift my hips, and I'm going to trap. I lose the hook, change my legs, come back to trap, right? Once again, I'm going to lift my hips, I have the trap. I lose the hook, and I come back. If you continue to practice this, it's a really great transition. And if you build that up into your muscle memory, it'll be something that's very simple for you to move back and forth between. Whether it's the regular X-guard or the single leg X-guard, you're bound to really unbalance your partner and make them feel really insecure about standing.
It's a frying pan and fire kind of thing, because it's like, oh, damn, oh, it's going back and forth between bad and worse.
That's the type of response you want from your partner. And if anything, you just want them to be afraid of your legs, right? Because your hooks are trapping them on every side, every which way that they go. And that's really, really important because, again, it's partially psychological. Even unbalancing a big guy a little bit makes them go, oh, I got to take this person a little bit more seriously, right? And I've had so many times where I've trained with people, and of course I know when I'm training with somebody like Stephan, he's not going to use 100% of his strength on me. But if we're going to train together well, he's going to try and move, and I'm going to try and move. But the funniest thing is when you're training with somebody and then they go, you know, I was going to train with you a little bit light, and I'm thinking, you know, you're like 50, 60 pounds lighter than me. But then you started playing your guard, and then I realized, oh shit, I actually have to go a little bit harder. So it's a nice compliment to know that somebody's taking you a little bit more seriously because you have a really tight game.
Well, I think maybe that's the answer when people say, no, my training partners don't take me seriously. If you start seriously threatening them, most of the time they'll start taking you seriously.
Right, and you know, part of that, again, being a smaller frame person is about having really solid technique, knowing how to direct your partner's energy, right? So just freak them out a little bit if even you're just going to set them off balance. It's enough to make them sweat a little, and if anything, it'll end up putting you on top.
So before I started training with Marcelo Garcia, one of the problems that I had was I didn't really understand the dynamics or what I was doing right or wrong in the X-guard. So again, this is a really in-depth position that you can study on your own. There's tons of material out there for it. But just as, you know, a few sidelines, you're thinking about how your body is moving, right? You're not moving side to side. You're not just moving, you know, back and forth, but you're really thinking about extending your body like an accordion and bringing it in. So as a rule of thumb, you want to make sure that your outside leg is always the one on top, right? And I don't want the hook of my foot to go into Stephan's crotch. Firstly, because it's not really that comfortable for him. Second of all, because I need the inseam, I need his thigh to really be able to push away, right? Right up the middle of your partner's legs, not so good, okay? It's not that effective. The other thing is this hook right here, I want to keep it, for the most part, I like to keep it behind my partner's knee until I'm going to move and do something, okay? And this leg will move based on the type of sweep that you're doing. Another major thing that people will do wrong is they'll just hold the X-guard like this. So right here, Stephan's very comfortable because he can stand this far apart, okay? If I'm even more passive about it and he steps this foot in even closer, this really sucks for me because now he's trapped my hip and I can't move away. So you guys have to remember that a lot of this movement is about extension, pulling things together, and extending, right? So now that I'm here,
You have my full attention.
and now I have his attention. The other thing that I want to keep in mind is knee control. A lot of people will not think about this knee at all. The problem with that is that if I'm not thinking about his knee and I'm just worried about his ankle, Stephan could go ahead and drop his knee, and now I've lost my position. So in order to prevent that from happening, whenever you have the X-guard position, make sure that your outside hand, if it's not doing something useful like preventing grips or pushing your partner away, that it's actually cupping your partner's kneecap, so that if Stephan starts having the instinct to move across, I'm going to push his kneecap back into place. That's going to basically assure me that I'm not going to let him just walk right through. The other major thing that I see wrong is people that have their hand positioning in the wrong place. Some people will overhook the ankle not knowing that this makes a big difference, or when they go to trap the leg, they trap it between their bicep and their forearm. This is not a very powerful position for me. I need to extend his legs. The closer his legs are together, the less extension I have. So in order to really make it work, I want to trap his ankle between my shoulder and my neck, and if possible, trap the ankle, trap the knee. So from this position, if you guys notice, I've actually kind of crisscrossed grips on Stephan's leg, so it's going to make it really difficult for him to escape. Also, I've now maximized the distance between my legs and his, right? So now I have the ability to really thrust and make him uncomfortable.
When I start playing the X guard, again, there's a number of different things you can do from it, but I like to mainly focus on two different outcomes. And one of them is based on whether my partner stands tall. The other one is based on whether my partner looks to expand and sort of put his hands on the mat and keep himself from moving, right? So he's gonna base out pretty hard. There's so many different variations that you can work in, but I think that these two really maximize this idea of playing with somebody else's height and weight, okay? And manipulating it so that it's better for you. So Stephan's gonna go ahead and stand up.
When I go ahead and get into the X guard position, generally two things happen, okay? Your partner is struggling to find their balance because you have dropped your hips directly under theirs. Anybody that's holding the X guard position well should make their partner feel a little bit threatened, okay? He might not know what to do just yet, but your partner should definitely be thinking, oh shit, what am I gonna do now, okay? So the first thing that I think happens is people will often base their hands out. So they think that by putting all four posts on the floor, that they're really good. This is great for me because he's got everything tied up. There's nothing really preventing me here except for his hips. But what I want to do from this position is I'm going to go ahead and extend my body out, and then I'm going to post up on my hand, technical stand up, and dump him over. So we're bringing a very fundamental movement, again, back into advanced technique. So your partner starts to base out. So all 4 points are on the mat. You're going to go ahead and extend your partner away from you. When they do this, notice I sit up on my elbow, okay? Then I'm also going to sit up on my hand, stand back, and stand up. The thing that I really like about this outcome for the sweep is that as a smaller person, I'm going to maximize my distance from my toes to the top of my head. This is something that's unusual. You don't get that kind of leeway with a lot of sweeps, but it's really advantageous for you because you're able to maybe move your partner, manipulate your partner in ways that they otherwise might not expect you to. It's very hard for anyone to resist a foot on top of the shoulder. It's hard for you to balance. So what I did to Stephan there was I forced him to basically post on a very small part of his body, and I just dumped him right over.
Yeah, and you have my leg up on your shoulder, so it's hard for me to scamper away or get back to my feet.
Right. The other way that I like to approach this is from another outcome. So sometimes your partner will base out, and then when you start to threaten to extend, they go to stand all the way back up. When they stand all the way back up, what you're going to do here is you're going to use that tall weight, you're going to push away, but my instep here is going to drop down behind his Achilles, and I'm going to extend and pull it out. That helps my partner fall backwards. So from this angle, right, Stephan goes to base out. He feels a little threatened, but then he decides that he wants to stand up tall. As soon as he stands up, I'm going to drop my foot behind his ankle. I'm going to pull my hook out. My other hook is going to go backwards, and because of his height and his weight, he gets swept out. Now, as soon as you sweep your partner, it's also very important that you commit and you finish the sweep by grabbing onto their pant legs or their heels. If you don't, they're going to sit right back up on top of you. So, in a perfect world, all of this would happen really beautifully and you'd execute everything all the time. But most of the time, it's not perfect. It's probably kind of dismal. You feel like crap. You think, why am I training? Why am I doing this? I suck. I thought I probably sucked 99% of the time I trained jiu-jitsu. I still think that sometimes today because it's not going to always work out the way you want it to. So the idea here is thinking about transitions and escapes that are going to be effective and save your butt, okay? You don't want to let your partner just escape out of what you're setting up and then let them get the more advantageous position, right? So one of the things that I like to think about, again, is this idea of framing and transitioning quickly. So a lot of the times, I'll go ahead and try and pull my partner into position. And when I go to pull my larger partner into position, their weight falls a little bit dead on me, right? Maybe they've caught on, right? So in this position, I'm a little screwed. I don't want to just go, Stephan's on top of me and just like abandon everything. I need to stay small and tight. So if you see me here, I'm not extending my body and panicking. I'm trying to stay compact because if I'm a little bit more compact, I have mass underneath my partner. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to maintain this frame on the inside of his armpit, and my other hand could even post on his bicep. Because if I don't post on the bicep, his hand's just going to come right in, and now I'm not in a good position. So keep the dangerous parts of his body away from you. If you notice, the hook here is maintained on the inside, right? On the inseam, I still keep that hook active, and my knee is slightly blocking the outside of his pelvis. So I'm right here. I don't want to get into this position where I let everything get collapsed, because if I do this, I'm in a really, really bad situation. Okay, I'm going to get passed and squashed. I'll be pancaked. So we go back to this idea of framing. Stephan's going to be trying and driving all his weight down on towards me, so I frame. From here, what I want to think about doing is getting this hook out and also getting this frame out to get the underhook, right? So the underhook's really important, and I tell a lot of my students, whoever wins the underhook fight is usually going to win the position, right? So from here, I'm going to go ahead and switch. At the same time, my hand comes out for the underhook, and then my legs figure 4 around Stephan. So now, if you guys see, I'm playing on an angle. I'm playing to the outside of Stephan's body, avoiding being right underneath and getting squashed. I think I heard my vertebrae snap a few times there. So we're here, and I want to lock and maintain this underhook position. From here, with this bicep trapped, I want to, again, make sure that I'm not letting his arm come any closer than it needs to, and then I'm going to go ahead and use some momentum here and drive my body up onto my elbow. Once I'm on my elbow, I'm looking to post up on my hand, come up. I have a hook in. This is great for me, okay? So a couple things can happen here. I can go seatbelt grip, right? Once I go seatbelt grip, I can try and drag Stephan back on top of me and get both hooks in. Or, if I come out here, I can go ahead and remove my grip and come out behind and start to play from a different angle. A lot of the times your partner will feel a little bit threatened. They might even roll onto their back, in which case I've now reversed the position and I can look to pass. So we're going to go ahead with the same movement one more time, but from a slightly different angle. I want you to really pay attention to the way that I'm moving on my side here, not getting squished underneath Stephan, and pay attention to the way that my legs and my arms are framing out against him, okay? So I'm here, my attack to go here fails. So again, I want to get over onto my side, make a frame. So my hand goes on his bicep, my other arm is tucked in across his chest, and not letting him get the underhook and keeping it tucked in on the elbow, on the armpit. If you guys also notice my leg here, my hook is on the inseam, and my knee is blocking his pelvis from collapsing in, right? If I let my knee come on the inside, Stephan's going to push both my knees together, and now I'm going to get past. So we're here, and I want to maintain a bit of distance by being able to frame out. So I have a bit of a rectangle, I guess, you know, a good shape, a geometric shape here, a rectangle frame, and then my hook. What I want to do next is, again, go in for the underhook and transition my leg to the outside. So I'm going to do it at the same time, and I track low. Once I come here, I'm going to come up onto my elbow,
all the way up. And if Stephan goes ahead and rolls to his side, that's great for me. If not, and he stays on all fours, I have one hook. So when I come out, I want to go ahead and seatbelt. And from here, I can either roll over and take the back, or I can also roll to the same side and take the back as well.
I find it really interesting that all these little tweaks that you're doing are stopping me from settling my weight on you. Because of course what I want really to do is get past this bloody leg, past the instep, past the knee, get the underhook here, get the cross face here, turn them flat on your back, and then pop your head off with my shoulder here, right? And sometimes you need to get people to tap out and you're not moving around anymore. But it seems like every single step that you're doing is stopping me from getting you flat on your back and getting those two grips.
Yeah, so again, it plays back into this idea that I was talking about earlier about transitioning and expecting the worst, already forecasting what's coming and not letting it happen, right?
And you've trained it before, so you know what to expect.
And I think a lot of the times when you learn techniques, how many times have you learned an escape from the worst scenario? We learn how to bridge out of cross-side. We don't learn what to do between when somebody passes you and you end up on your back. So these moments in between are really, really essential, because if I'm not thinking about, oh crap, Stephan broke past my guard, he's in the half guard, and now he's gonna start to pass me. It's inevitable, you're much bigger, I'm gonna just expect him to pass. So knowing that, I have to start setting myself up so that I don't let him pass, right? I don't wanna get myself into a situation where I'm just like, okay, he's gonna pass my guard, I'm gonna be underneath him, and now I'm just gonna be stuck here for the next 5 minutes. So that's why all those details are really important. You wanna be annoying, right? I wanna
You're good at that.
Yeah, I wanna be a little bit annoying, because if anything, it's going to irritate and frustrate my partner, and it's going to cause them to move in ways that they might not otherwise think of doing, right? You're probably used to just slamming through and getting into a better advantageous position. So what I want to do again is just keep his weight off of me, frame, make a little bit of space. I'm in a defensive mode. I need to make space. He's in an offensive mode. He needs to take space away. Don't let your opponent do that. Continue to make space. Maintain the space that you're able to take. Don't give it back. And from there, you got to keep moving until you get into a better position. It's much easier to escape out of positions that aren't fully committed yet, right? So that's the idea here, is I need to make that framework work for me, not for you. So in the eventual case that you frame out and you're looking to go out the backside and you can't, there's a couple other things that you can do. And these all still work with this idea of manipulating your partner's weight that's on top of you. So the entry is very similar. It's when the attack fails, right? So I'm here and I go to lift Stephan, and he kind of sticks his weight on top of me. So again, from here I want to go ahead and push him over to the side. And now again, I'm not directly underneath Stephan. I'm going to frame out a little bit on his bicep, and this time, instead of maintaining this hook and trying to come out the backside, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my hook out, and you're going to see my hook is now cleared and now is on top of Stephan's body. I'm going to use this leg and swing it down like a pendulum. So I like to build momentum by kicking, and with that up kick, when I down kick, I'm looking to drop my butt lower, okay? So now I'm here. My hand's going to grab a little bit lower, and then I'm going to do it again, right? And again. So now I'm a lot lower than I used to be. When I started this position, I was much higher up. From here, I'm going to take this outside hand, dive in for the underhook here, and I'm grabbing the top of Stephan's ankle. Now, a lot of the times when you do this, you need to make sure that you lock your half guard so that your partner doesn't walk through your guard. So in the times that you're not swinging your leg, you're going to lock your half guard. Stephan's response, most of the time the person on top is like, okay, I don't like this little person burrowing underneath me. I'm not a little tunnel. So they'll usually try and sit their weight back on themselves a little bit. This is fine, okay? What I want to do with this hand that's around the belt loop is I'm not going to grab and try and trap Stephan's butt. I'm going to actually try and come underneath, okay? So again, you're not reaching across where there's a lot of area to cover, but you're going to come underneath. And this hand that has this ankle is going to pass the foot off.
So I'm gonna take this foot and pass it off to my other hand. Now, if Stephan sits back on his butt, that's fine. Because look, I escape my elbow, my hand comes to the outside of his knee, and now all I'm doing is I'm using my shoulder, and I'm gonna drive him right across. So there's no lifting involved. What works really well here is this idea that I'm narrowing the tracks that Stephan's on so that I can unbalance him sideways. I'm not waiting for him to base. Again, I'm just taking him sideways. It's gonna be pretty hard for him to resist. So from a different angle, we'll just go over this again. I'm gonna go in and enter into the position, and Stephan collapses his weight on top of me. I keep the frame, and I'm gonna escape out the side. I'm gonna swing and trap when I need to. The hand's gonna dive under and grab the top of the ankle, pass it off to the other hand. The other hand, once again, it's not wrapping over the back or the butt, it's coming under. The hand escapes to come out on top of the knee, and then from here, I'm driving straight across. I'm taking Stephan basically right over his shin, from his foot to his knee. That's what I'm gonna drive him over. I'm not asking him to go forwards or backwards. So there's going to be problems again with this movement as well, right? In this position where I'm able to execute the sweep the first way from the half guard, that's usually when your partner isn't driving weight back into you. But there's going to be times where your partner is going to resist because they already feel what you're trying to do. In that situation, you want a slightly different outcome. So we're going to start again in the half guard position. I'm already set up, and I'm going to go ahead and swing. And I'm ready to try and drive across. But in this position, Stephan can feel my momentum driving this way. So he's a little bit more hip to that, and he's gonna start driving his weight back into me. Now, when he starts driving his weight back into me, if I just try and stand here and resist it, I'm gonna get crushed. So the idea here is that this hand that I'm posting on, I'm gonna go ahead and dive right back under, and I'm gonna grab his ankle. When I do that, I'm going to use his momentum that's driving into me to take him to the other side. The really nice thing about this is, again, he's a much larger person than me, so you might think that he might stop and stagnate his weight as I try to take him through. But I'm using Stephan's own momentum and energy against him. And this is something that you should really learn how to do, is manipulate your partner's energy. It's a great way to execute really good sweeps, get submissions, and move around your partner.
And if you're a bigger guy who's gotten his hands on this DVD, first of all, you should burn it. Second of all, know that this is one of my very favorite sweeps, and that when you do it incorrectly, with the incorrect timing or incorrect energy, you can't do it. It's trying to move a huge weight across your body. But when you get the timing right and the energy right, it feels effortless, and it's a fantastic feeling.
Right.
So
just from a different angle, we'll look at it again. So we're going to go right into this half guard position. I'm out on the side, I kick, I'm looking to drive, and Stephan resists. I dive under, and I go over. All right, so I just want to go over some hand details here. When I go ahead and I shoot under, and then I come up, and I want to go and grab underneath again. Notice I'm posted on my elbow. When I dive under, I want to make sure that I shoot pretty deep and that this hand reaches in and grabs around my partner's ankle, okay? So I'm really underneath my partner now, okay? But again, this is not stagnant weight, this is using their momentum. Just to explain the detail again, from here I'm on my elbow, and then I'm going to shoot really deep so that my hips are trapping his hips as well. Also, from the back side, let's just show this as well. We went from holding this to now diving deep and trapping around the hip. So make sure that you go from the foot and release when this gets deep to trap around the hip, okay? So one more time. We went from here where I'm trapping, I'm doing the first sweep. He's pushing back, so I'm gonna dive under, and once I dive under, I can release this foot and grab around the hip to take him over. This is really important when we're thinking about space management. If you notice, my hips get very close to Stephan's and I get very tight. I don't want to have a situation where there's too much gap, too much space between his body and mine, because this is all built upon momentum and I want to flow off of what he's giving me. So keep that in mind as you move around. Sometimes you need to keep your distance, other times you need to be really, really close. Something else I want to share with you is something that my friend Tatiana Garcia, Marcelo's wife, calls the vomit sweep. She calls it the vomit sweep because she basically has to use her whole body and all her momentum to toss her partner over. Okay, you can fit this sweep into the whole series that we just started with that entry. Or, I mean, if you're escaping out of mount, if you have somebody passing your guard and you just happen to be clinching onto somebody's half guard, this is another way that you can save yourself. This is, oh my God, I'm going to get my guard passed, last minute, got to do something kind of sweep. Throw the baby out with the, whatever the saying is.
Baby in the bathwater.
Baby in the bathwater. So I'm in this position where Stephan is really going to trudge right through my guard. So if you see, his knee's already even through. This is really not good for me. It's going to be hard for me to trap this in again. So what I want to do this time is I'm going to take his lapel and I'm going to pass it off between his legs, and my outside arm is going to come underneath and grab his lapel right between, okay? Now the important thing here is with this angle, we'll turn around. I want to make sure that the grip is underneath his butt and that it's not too low or that it's not too high, okay? I want to make a little bit of a seat here. And with this seat, I know Stephan's passing my guard. He's already moving forward. That's fine. Let your partner move forward because you're going to trap their knee or trap their hand. You can get this even better. As Stephan tries to go ahead and pass my guard, I'm just going to lift and pull up. All right? So the important thing to remember with this sweep is, again, it's the last straw. Your guard is getting passed and you don't want to end up on the bottom. This is when you're going to pull this out.
Are you shucking me up with your shoulder or your...
Yeah, the shoulder motion really helps to have a little bit of a shuck to maybe startle your partner and make them sort of try to base out. So let's show that again. So my guard is definitely getting passed and Stephan goes ahead and man, his knees across. This is really bad for me. So my inside arm is going to take the lapel, pass it between the legs and underneath his butt. I have a very tight grip here and I created a seat, a bit of a saddle. My other hand is either going to try and reach for his sleeve or possibly the knee. The sleeve is always best if you can. And again, I want to let Stephan think that he's going to pass my guard and then I'm going to come here and I'm going to lift and kick up and roll over. This is really, really good because again, I'm using his momentum to carry me over.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm almost past and then I get hit basically in the hamstring, or the lower buttock,
So
and
again,
I fall on my face.
yeah, and it's a little bit of that idea of tension, right? I don't give you too much to make you stall out your movement, right? I want you to still think that, she's not going to stop me. I'm going to plow right through this. That's when you're going to move. Tatiana calls it the vomit sweep because, again, it's just kind of like you're like, "Wah!" You're just going to throw everything out, right? That's the last thing that you can do.
Is there an argument for using the lapel or the belt?
I really like using the lapel, especially the cross, if I can, right? Because I have a little bit more control over your upper body that way. If I grab onto your belt or the same side, I don't have the control over the diagonal.
Okay.
When we talk about deciding to pass the guard or breaking open the guard, we want to remember as a smaller person, you don't have a lot of power and size to work with. So you have to be explosive, you have to be quick. A lot of the times when I'm teaching my students how to break open the guard, a big key component of that is posture, right? Also, when you're working with somebody that's much larger than you, if you can avoid having them close their guard around you, all that much better, okay? If they do close their guard around you, again, be explosive, leverage yourself, use your hips, use different types of grips to move around your partner. Otherwise, you get yourself compromised and really put in a very bad position, a lot of times triangled, or you get stuck inside somebody's closed guard for 10 minutes. It's happened to me many times, and it's extremely frustrating because you can't even perform and show the rest of your game because you're spending all that time unsuccessfully trying to get your way through two legs.
Mm-hmm. So can you give some examples of how not to let me close my guard if I am trying to put you in the guard?
Why don't you lie down on your back? So again, this idea is I like to try and pass standing all the time. It's much better for me. But one of the things that I want to remember if I want to prevent my partner from closing their guard around me is when and if I get them onto their back, I don't want to walk into their guard at a very narrow angle. From here, Stephan can actually probably wrap his legs around me and then I'm kind of stuck in a bad position again. So when I enter into somebody's guard, I want to keep my stance wide, keep my elbows tucked in on the inside, not out. And the other trick that I like to use that I find really effective is that if you can drive your knees behind your partner's hamstrings, it actually makes it really difficult for them to close their guard, right? So from here I'm at an angle, but what I want to do now is I'm going to step my other leg behind Stephan's knees, and then if I keep my elbows in, if Stephan tries to close his legs, it's actually pretty tough for him. I've put him in a really awkward angle. The other thing is I'm framing out again here, right? And I'm controlling his knees. So if he tries to lift something, I pull it back down. Makes it very tough for him to close his legs around me, and then from here I'm able to start moving. So here we are in a really bad position. I let somebody close their guard around me, and that person happens to be a lot bigger and way more powerful. So one of the fundamental things here is I got to be mindful of my posture. So posture is really important inside the guard. When you see someone with poor posture, hunched over, or actively just not thinking about anything, this is where I'm going to get myself into trouble because Stephan can make grips, he can use his legs to break my posture, okay? I'm going to go for a ride, and then I'm going to be fighting this dynamic the whole time getting tossed around in between his legs. It really sucks for you, and you start to feel a little futile and helpless. So when you're making a posture in the guard, you want to maintain a real good frame with the floor, okay? So I like to use the floor as a base or a foundation, my body, so my spine is another angle, and then my hands also frame out on his body, right? You can have a couple grips going on here. Maybe you have the lapel, and then from here I'm going to thrust my palm into his sternum. My other hand might come up onto his hip. What's really nice about this is I'm not going to have a full extension with my elbows. I want to keep a slight bend, but not my elbows out, my elbows slightly tucked in. If Stephan goes to make grips and pull me in again, what happens is I apply pressure onto his sternum. Doesn't feel so great for him, so he's not going to be able to maintain that grip for a very long time, right? So Stephan's going to go ahead and try and pull me down from here, right? He makes a grip, he jerks, he releases, right? Momentarily, he's going to release the jerking motion because I've pushed into his sternum. When you have that time and he stops aggressively pulling you down, this is where I'm going to go ahead and trap his sleeve or his fingers, and I'm going to strip the grip away, and if I can, go 2-on-1. If I can't go 2-on-1, I want to maintain some sort of a grip because I worked this hard to get here, okay? So once again, your partner, try and make it uncomfortable for them to be jerking down and pulling you into an uncomfortable position. He jerks, but in that time, you're going to break and strip a grip. If you can, maintain it. When we looked at some of the drills earlier on, one of the things that we had in mind here was a pop-up drill, so an explosion from the guard. If you're able to maintain a 2-on-1 grip, great. If not, grab onto whatever you can. Sometimes tuck the grips in between your partner's armpits. Otherwise, you can just thrust on the rib cage, have a standard grip here. But the idea is, I'm here, I want to have active toes, and I'm going to pop right up, right? Once I get into this position, I'm going to maintain this grip on the sleeve, and the idea here is that I want to use my hip thrust to make things uncomfortable for Stephan. He can't grab my outside leg here because I've trapped his arm. So I'm gonna maintain this grip. I'm gonna pull my elbow in. And as I thrust my hips through, I'm gonna also drive in for the back pocket, right? So I thrust my hips through, and you can see Stephan's leg's already cracked open. From here, I can just pass the leg over. That leveraging motion, by using my hips to force his hips open, for someone who even has really long legs, it makes it very uncomfortable for them to keep it closed. So again, let's look at that. I have a grip, 2 on 1. I'm gonna go ahead and pop up, and I'm gonna thrust my hips. So when we think about guard passing, one of the things that I'm really in favor of is standing and passing. I've actually probably done this for a great part of my career, since I was maybe like a solid blue belt or so. A lot of it is because you can apply more force and leverage on your partner when you're in a standing position. I know some people that are really in favor of always having low passes, and that's great, but you know, when you have a partner with very strong legs or big body, it's gonna be very hard for you to use your shoulder or just use your small body against that part, okay? So when I think about standing and passing, we've talked about this idea of entering into their zone. I'm going to confidently enter into Stephan's zone because I know how I want to guard pass. And the thing that I want to remember here is I'm going to break his posture down. So Stephan's already sitting up in an open seated guard. I need to think about applying pressure and keeping him down on the mat. So when I go to step in, I like to walk in very deeply with my forward foot. So I'm going to not step in a mid-range zone. I'm not going to stay too far away, but I have to time myself to come right in. If I'm stepping in deep, it prevents Stephan from being able to block me really well, right? So his hands are open, which is the right thing to do, but the thing that I want to keep in mind is a little bit of hand fighting again, so it goes back to that whole thing about grip fighting. Very important. This is our first point of contact. So I need to either swipe his hands away, move them however which way I want, because I want to step in deep. Once I step in deep, I want to think about pushing his shoulders, his head, his chest, driving him to the floor. As I drive him to the floor, I need to keep him on the floor. So the important thing here is that the palm of my hand is going to thrust right underneath his sternum. If you notice, I stepped my right leg over, so now I'm straddling one of his legs. When I'm here, I'm thinking about applying an even amount of pressure between each of my 3 posts. So my 2 legs and my hand are equally playing pressure on Stephan. This hand in the sternum is really important. It's not a grab on the lapel, it's not grabbing at the side, but it's right up into the middle of his sternum. The reason for this is if Stephan tries to sit up, it actually makes it very uncomfortable for him. It feels like it's more pressure than it really is. Most of the time, people from this position are going to pull their knees in towards themselves a little bit to protect their body. They don't want to get their guard passed. This is perfect because with this hand on the sternum, my outside hand is going to come on top of his knee. When it comes on top of his knee, I'm going to look to actually push his leg straight back and kick my back leg straight up. Now when I do that, it's that same idea with the grip breaking. I'm moving in 2 different directions, so I'm creating more momentum and more force. I want to apply about 60% pressure into my hand, 40% into my foot, and from here I'm going to weigh down. I've removed 1 post, and I'm going to come to knee on belly, and then cross-side I've passed. So again, I'm here. I'm not playing too far out. I want to grip fight, get in, drop pressure, maintain it. Trap the knee, hand on the knee. I'm going to thrust up, 60-40 pressure, come back through knee on belly, and pass. From a different angle, guys, let's watch the pressure again. So I'm coming in, hand fighting, I'm going to get in deep, hand pressure. From here, I've straddled the legs. I'm going to push, kick, and then from here, I'm going to drop my knee and come through. Part of the reason why I like to try and drop my knee on this hip is because someone that's a lot bigger than you, or someone who has long legs even, once you kick yourself through, you're going to step through, and if you don't seal the hip off, they can often maybe get on their side and shrimp away from you and drag their knee back in, which you don't want. So that's why I like to hip thrust, come through, and just trap their hip a little bit. so I can prevent them from reguarding. So, this is the bane of my existence, spider guard. People with really long legs hurts me. I don't have that much length to give, so when somebody stretches me out really well, I get very annoyed. I worked a little while on this with a few different people, and this was a really good pass for me to incorporate into my game, because again, this is where I'm learning how to pass using a lot of tension, right? And throwing somebody else's tension back in their face. So when somebody pulls a spider guard on you, they're really looking to stretch you out. And what you need to do is get rid of all of this, because obviously you're hung up, you're not gonna be able to do anything. So it's gonna be tough to grab the lapel, it's gonna be tough to grab their sleeves sometimes, so grab anything that you can. Most of the time you're gonna be able to at least grab part of their leg, okay? When you grab onto their pant leg, this hand, if my hand is free, that's great, because what I can do is I can go a 2-on-1 grip here. And notice in this position, I'm actually not focusing so much on stripping these grips just yet, because what I'm doing is I'm gonna strip this grip, which is the foot on my bicep. So I have a 2-on-1 grip on his pant leg. And then what I'm actually gonna do is I'm gonna step back with the leg that's being posted on the hip with, and I'm gonna throw his leg across my body. So I'm here, I'm stretched out, I grabbed onto his pant leg, I'm gonna go ahead and grip with my other hand, I'm gonna step away, so I'm gonna make space, and I'm gonna thrust his leg across my body. Okay? What I like about this now is I'm gonna switch the grip, pass it off to a pistol, and drop my other hand on the hip. From here, I'm gonna drive both knees towards the floor and post myself until I can drop my hip down. From this position, if Stephan tries to open his legs up again, it's really tough because I've pulled both of his knees together. Notice too, the way that I've sprawled my body out on top of him, my hips are on top of his thigh. So I don't want to be in a push-up mode like this, because here it's uneven pressure. So when you pull that leg across, you want to drop yourself, but you're going to sprawl on top of the thigh. So one more time. They pulled you out. I'm in a bad position. I'm going to grab the pant leg. My other hand, I'm going to try and grab the pant leg, same side, 2-on-1. I'm going to step away and I'm going to pull the leg across my body. From here, I pass off the grip, trap the hip, and I sprawl. Once I sprawled into this position, most commonly what's going to happen is your partner's either going to try and crawl into a turtle position or pull away from you. So when Stephan tries to pull away or turtle, I've got this hip trapped and I'm going to pull it back towards the floor and pull his leg towards me. I call this the come here bitch move, okay? He's going to turn away. I'm going to say, come here, bitch. And I've trapped him. From here, I'm going to go ahead and think about dropping my weight down and passing his guard. So what I really like about this pass is it's utilizing a little bit of everything that we've talked about. I'm already in a standing position, so I'm a little bit better off than being too close to my partner. I'm talking about stripping grips and maintaining control. I'm also thinking about using what little body weight and power that I have and dropping it on my partner. And I'm also thinking about always trying to go 2-on-1, so doubling up on one limb. So this is, again, utilizing everything that I have on one part of my partner that's giving me a lot of problems. So if we just look at the pass again, I'm having problems being stretched out. I'm going to go ahead and grab something, reach across, and go 2-on-1, right? I'm already standing, so this is great for me. Now the other thing that's really important here is I'm not trying to slowly move and put pressure on my partner. This is a very quick and explosive move. I want to catch them off guard. So when I go ahead and thrust that leg over, it's going to be fast and you got to give it everything you have. This is going to take the most effort, just coming here. Once you come here, pass the grip, and then you can drop your body weight. This is going to help you a lot. Once you've thrusted and dropped your body weight and sprawled, the next part of this is watching your partner try and scramble away from you. it gives you a little bit of a mind trip because you're like, haha, I've passed your guard and you thought you had me. So when Stephan tries to pull away, I trap the hip, and again, I'm just going to use my whole body weight again, and I'm just going to pull him back towards me, okay? So there's a couple jerking motions in there, and if you aren't very good with that kind of stuff, there's tons of different types of strength and conditioning exercises you can do to help build that up. I definitely do them myself. So again, when you're using your strength, you got to put everything into it, if not for just brief seconds, okay? We're not looking to apply a lot of pressure over a long period of time. That should make it a little bit easier for you to get to this. So when you're looking at guard passing, every form of guard really is, whether it's closed, open, you're going to go De La Hiva, you're going to go open sitting guard. Everything in terms of your entry needs to be clear of the leg. So I want to be able to open up the closed guard, or at least get myself into an advantageous position so I can start to work my angles. So if you're in a spider guard perchance, you're going to definitely have the space, but you need to get past all of these legs, right? So however you like to pass and open and strip grips from the spider guard, you come here, maybe I like to come back. I always like to start my passing from center, okay? And this is because I can go this way, I can go that way, I can come through the center, but I like to always set it up here. So however you like to set up your guard passing, just remember, give yourself options so that you have different ways that you can go. Once I get into this position, I am looking to secure the underhook. A lot of the times I've mentioned before, whoever wins the underhook probably has a better chance of winning the position. So when I'm in this position and I start to look past and drive through, it's very common for a lot of you guys to lead with your knee or to try and come out the side. The idea here is as I start to change my angle, I want to keep my elbow close to me, drive my body in, and trap the underhook. When I get the underhook, I can either grab here and secure it really closely, or I drive my hand really, really far up so that it's hard for Stephan to clear my arm otherwise. Once I get into this position, I'm going to go ahead and trap his tricep and go over. And then I'm going to come into this over-under grip. I've trapped Stephan across his chest, and my head is going to fall over to this side. And I, again, want to use my head as a bit of an appendage, and I'm going to drive his head with my head. So I'm here. All the while, I need to make sure that my hips stay close to the ground. I don't want to be in a position here where I've lifted my hips or I'm piking up. Once I pike up, Stephan can actually post his hand on my hip, okay? And this is where I get myself into trouble because I could get lifted here, especially when somebody's bigger, right? So, if you're going to go with an over-under grip, stay close to the ground. Keep your head driving away. The other thing you'll notice is that Stephan's leg is flat to the floor. I don't want to let him get into this position where he's figure forward my leg and he pulls my hip over his. So he's going to pull me back to center. This is no good for me because, again, I don't have control here. So I need to walk and kick my leg out to keep myself flat. I've got his arm pretty tight and I'm laying my chest right across it. So again, if you guys notice, I'm on an angle. I am not on top of my partner. I'm on his side. If Stephan tries to come out to his side here, it's really tough for him because I've actually bolted his arm down onto the floor, right? So try as he might, I have his leg and his arm trapped to the floor. He's going to try and pull away, and he can't. What's good about him pulling away is he exerts a little bit of energy. Every time he does that, I'm going to take my far foot, plant it on top of his knee, and he's going to pull away. And then when he relaxes, I'm going to pull my knee out just a little bit. Once I get to this point, I'm going to do a baseball slide and come through. So again, this is about staying really close to your partner. This isn't a pass where we're utilizing a lot of space. I want to get close, I want to get tight, and from there, I want to be able to pull my knee out. From a different angle, it's going to look like this.
I strip off my grips, I'm back in center. I come in through here, and again, I'm diving in to get this underhook. So I come through, he's already on his side. I'm gonna trap with an overhook, drop my body down, okay? This hand is still deep, whether it's shooting up or it's trapping behind his armpit, I've got it deep. My chest lays heavy on top of Stephan's bicep. My head is thrusting away. His leg is flat on the floor, it's not centered. So if he figure fours and pulls me to center, I have to think about rolling my hips back on the floor. So I'm very flat. Every time he tries to thrust, I'm gonna think about putting my foot on top of his knee and pulling it out. Pulling it out, pulling it out. What's really nice about this pass is that I'm keeping his upper body bolted down to the floor, and every time he tries to make a movement, I'm taking the space in between, so it's about the timing there that I'm using to inch my knee out. It's a great pass, very successful. I do this to some of my students. I have one guy that's about 250. It's a great pass that I can use on a big guy because I'm staying on top, but I'm utilizing my weight very efficiently by staying weighted on one side. If you noticed when I said the detail about watching their figure four, making sure that they don't drag their hip back on top of you, when my hips go on top of Stephan, that's when I'm gonna get swept or he's gonna be able to do something to me.
Yeah, it feels like you're completely off to one side, and unless you make the mistake to come back on top, then I could do something, but you're completely off to one side, you're flat on the ground. I don't have the strength to pick you up over here and move you that way.
It's very awkward for you, right? Mm-hmm. The mistake that I don't want to make is letting go of this overhook. If I don't have this arm bolted down to the ground, that's how Stephan's going to reach over my back and potentially take my back or sweep me over. So again, make sure that you stay tight, stay bolted, inch your way out of that position. One of the main problems that everybody has, and definitely myself for a long time when I was training jiu-jitsu and even still now, is this idea of getting stuck on the bottom. I think for years it was my worst position, cross-side. I would say, man, I can't get out of this position. And it wasn't until recently that it really dawned on me, well, don't get into that position, right? If you can avoid it, don't go there.
Doctor, it hurts when I do this.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Because the reality is, you get stuck in a position like that, and the odds are just definitely against you, right? You're not only fighting your partner, but you're fighting gravity as well. And I think it was Marcus Suarez that said that. I remember picking that up. And it makes a lot of sense. It's not a comfortable place to be, and you didn't just lie on your back and let somebody get there. Obviously, it was a progression of things. So the way that I try and look at escaping now is to escape before it gets that bad. So to take all the opportunities where things are ticking away and you're going, okay, they broke open my guard. Okay, they're stepping over my one leg. They're in half guard. You start to realize when somebody's more powerful than you or they're more technical and they're going to be coming around your side. And at that point, that's when I want to already start thinking about how am I going to save myself from being stuck on the bottom. So I don't know what you think, but when I'm playing with somebody your size, I already know, man, Stephan's a big mofo. I don't want him coming around my guard and just smashing me. And I'm thinking that your mentality must be, I'm going to smash through her guard and I'm just going to smother her and I'm just going to sit on top of her.
It depends how generous I'm feeling. If we're rolling and if I can keep my ego in check, then I don't actually want to crush you because I want to see what happens with the roll. But I could certainly see a situation where you've somebody else, where if you've tapped them out, this hypothetical Stephan, you've just caught me in an armbar or a choke or something, and I just want to get to side mount and hold you there. I might not be as good as you, but I know I'm heavier, and if I can just hold you in side mount, I don't think anything bad's going to happen to me till the end of the round anyhow. Mm-hmm. So I could see it being a big problem for smaller people that they just get pinned, and the person doesn't even try to submit them. The person doesn't try to move, because as soon as they try and move or try and submit, they give space.
Right.
And I'm not going to give you space because I don't want to get tapped out again.
Well, and that's precisely what I think you should work on, right? If you're a smaller frame person, you got to take the space. your larger partner is generally not going to be able to hold you down as tightly as somebody your own size. And often, actually, I find that I have a harder time escaping from people that are my own size than I do necessarily from people that are bigger. And a lot of that is because you leave way more gaps, way more space. When I'm even training with people that are much smaller than me, it's difficult because I always say to them, I'm like, man, you are so hard to nail down and pin down. And it's usually because they've done a really good job of staying on their side and not flattening themselves out, right? So flattening yourself out and putting both your shoulders on the mat is probably the worst position you could get yourself into. I think I might think that that's worse than getting my back taken or the mount. So when I think about escapes now, I'm really trying to put my mind in the space of, I'm not even going to think about both shoulders on the mat, cross-side, pin down. I'm not going to let myself get there. So angles are really, really important, and I know that's come up in a lot of other parts of this DVD. But again, like, you have to be able to stay on your side. You have to be able to utilize the space that your partner's giving you. If they leave a little gap between their knee and their hip, you got to shove your knee in there or just curl up like a little ball. Stay on your side, and your partner is going to have a really hard time rolling you out, right?
Well, that sounds really good. Can you show us what you mean by that?
Yeah, for sure. So if I lie, I'm going to assume the cross-eyed bottom position that everybody hates being in. And if you're right on top of me from this position, I'm totally flat on my back, and it's really hard for me to actually even make a frame and do anything here because I'm flat. I have no leverage. I have nothing. I don't really even have a lot of space.
And both your shoulder blades are flat on the
Yeah,
ground.
both my shoulder blades are flat on the mat, so you're covering way more distance on my body, right? Like I don't have a lot of give because I'm pancaked. Now, if we change the scenario, and instead of me starting with both my shoulders on the mat, let's show it maybe from this angle where you're over here. If I think about trying to play my escapes from here, now, even though you're trying to hold me down, it's a little bit of a different scenario, right? Because there's a lot of space here and you can't pancake me out, right? We'll come on this side. I'm on my side. I'm not completely flat, but I have way more space, so I'm able to actually keep you off of me.
And it's harder for me to compress your breathing as well.
It is. It's never comfortable, but at least I can breathe. At least I have some use of my hands, some use of my legs. I can start moving and thinking about what else I can do.
So how do you get there if you don't get there, but if you do get there, how do you make that 20 degree, 30 degree, 45 degree shift?
The easiest way that I try to do this is when somebody's gonna inevitably pass, I am automatically thinking, get on your side, right? Every time I play off my back now, it's not a matter of staying flat on my back. As soon as I feel like my partner's starting to move around me, I just go to my side.
So show me.
So we're here, right? Instead of me staying here and going, oh no, Stephan passed my guard, when you start to come around, I'm already here, right? So even though he has, walked around my leg, he hasn't cleared my guard yet, and I bought myself a little bit of time and space. Because I didn't just go, oh, he passed my guard, let me lie on my back and wait for the cross-side escape, right? And that little change in thinking has really done a lot for me. And I wish I'd learned that maybe as a white belt or a blue belt, because I think I could have been a lot better, a lot faster.
Well, these guys will get better a lot faster. Damn
Yeah,
them.
I really feel like when I'm teaching my students, I tell them all the time, my job as an instructor is hopefully to make you learn all the things that I've learned in less time, right? So that's something that I think is really important. And when it comes to escaping, I spent a lot of time learning things from the worst position, but I should have spent more time learning things in between. And that's some of the stuff that we're going to go over for the rest of this section. All right, so the first technique that we're actually going to work on is, again, this idea of not laying flat on your back when your partner starts to come around the guard, and how to get to your side and how to stay on your side, and how to have a good position there without your partner actually being able to flatten you out. So realistically, when your partner's a lot bigger than you, eventually it's going to wear and tear on you, right? So there's a couple coping mechanisms that we have. So from this position, let's just take a look at Stephan standing up. And
I know that Stephan's gonna start passing my guard at this point, right? So you can see my body's already tilted towards him a little bit, as opposed to me still trying to play here and trying to keep him in between my legs. So as soon as I start feeling his energy move to a certain side, I already wanna start putting my hands out and framing and thinking about what's gonna happen if he comes in this direction, right? As he continues to move around, I'm already thinking about posting away, framing, right? If I can, I'm gonna continue to try and keep him inside my guard, maybe a half guard here. Now, here's a really important detail. The thing I want you guys to focus on from this position is that if I stay on my side just like this, it's pretty good. I'm on my side, right? I'm gonna buy myself a little bit of space here to maybe work my legs back in. But if Stephan goes ahead and tries to grind me down, I'm eventually gonna wear down, right? Like, I might be able to hold myself there for about 5-10 seconds if I'm lucky, but eventually I'm gonna roll back. So here's a really cool trick that I learned. With your bottom arm, the one that's underneath your body, you're gonna tuck it in underneath your rib cage, just a little bit. It almost acts like a bit of a door wedge. From the back angle, it looks like this, right? As opposed to being here, I tucked my elbow in. Big difference when Stephan starts to come around. If I have my elbow in and he pushes, I can actually hold myself quite a bit longer, and as he's pushing, it gives me enough space to come back and put him back in my guard or set up for another sweep or another technique.
So that's an example of blocking the side down before it happens.
Exactly. And guys, it's this idea of already knowing what's coming. You know, they say jiu-jitsu is a thinking person's sport. I'd like to think that it is. But when you're moving, you have to begin to think about anticipating your partner's actions. It's when you start just reacting to everything that they're doing, you're sort of already one step behind. So when you know that your partner's moving in a certain pattern or they're going to be going a certain way, think about what you can expect, put the stop holds in, and this is something that could definitely improve your chances of not getting squashed and not getting stuck in that really terrible cross-side position. So making that little wedge underneath your body also makes it a little bit difficult for you to manipulate my arm and use it against me
You
to
mean
flatten
like
me out.
to turn you back onto your side?
Exactly. So like if I'm in this position here and I'm just on my side, my arm's still available for you.
Right.
And you can go ahead and reach in.
Yeah, I'm thinking this kind of
Exactly.
thing, or I'm thinking maybe if I can get here,
Yep.
I can start maneuvering you onto your back.
Exactly.
So it's a little bit like hiding that arm when you're in half guard, so that I can't pull you flat on your back.
Exactly. So you don't have to give everything to your partner, right? You got to make them work for it a little bit. So just by tucking it in, right? When I'm here and you go ahead and you start to try and pull it in, I'm making you reach a lot deeper than you want to.
Mm-hmm.
And this is great for me because then I can start thinking about getting this underhook, right? And again, this idea of fighting for the underhook is super important, right? Because this is often what's going to save you from winning or losing the position. So when you guys, again, are on your side, don't think about extending your arm and flattening yourself out and trying to frame out this way. Keep your arm hidden. Make your partner do the work to come into you. This is going to give you a lot more space to work with and inevitably lead to a much better outcome. The next thing that I really want to get into is, what everybody's thinking. Well, okay, I get it. It would be nice to stay on your side. It would be really nice if your partner didn't pass your guard, but what happens if they actually do? So we all get stuck in cross-side, and that weight underneath is pretty uncomfortable. Most of us learn how to do the basic frame and to re-guard, but I want to show you a little detail that I think makes a big difference in how successful you are at escaping or re-guarding. One of the main points too is also repetition and continuing to push and move and make space. A lot of times you see people bridge and escape, and what ends up happening is they'll bridge once, and then they're, it didn't work, and then they just kind of flatten themselves out.
And they go
again.
back to zero.
They go back to zero. So the idea here is you don't have a lot to work with. So whatever space you're able to get, you don't want to give it back to your partner. So it's about bridging and attacking multiple times, because every time you bridge, despite whether or not you're 100% successful, it makes your partner have to adjust, right? And that adjustment is where you're going to get the extra space. So you want to think about bridging multiple times and also not going backwards. You don't want to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You want to continue to try and move forward if you can. Also, the reason why you get so tired in that position is because when you're there and you're just bridging all this heavy weight off of you and then you give it up and you get pancaked, you're having to put 100% of energy into it every time you go to attempt it, right? Whereas if you think about, okay, I'm going to bridge now and I'm going to bridge again and again and again and again, you're sort of on a bit of a roll, so you're going to be tired, but chances are if you try it 3, 4, 5 times, you're going to get something back a little bit further along down the line from escaping, right?
Show me.
So maybe the best angle to show this at would be to show my feet here. So everybody knows this idea of, okay, my partner's flattening me out, my arms are splayed out, this is not good. So you want to think about how you're going to circle your arms back in. So for this, what I like to do is I like to be able to turn a little bit on a diagonal so that I can tuck my far elbow back into my partner's hips. And my other arm, I'm going to circle it in front of my partner's face and just tuck it in, right? So there's a lot of different ways that you guys have learned how to do this. However you like to get your arms in, let's stay there. What's important here is how I'm connecting to the mat with my feet. Most of us learn how to bridge like this, right? Our feet are firmly planted on the mat and we want to bridge towards our partner. But if you think about it, your energy is kind of dead. You're already connected to the mat. What you want to have is a little bit more explosive energy so that you cause a little bit more airtime with your partner. So for that, what you want to do is bring your knees up to touch your partner's rib cage, if you will, okay? Once you disconnect yourself from the mat, you're fully loaded here. So when you're actually ready to move and you bridge, it's a lot more of a pop-up and you're actually able to get more space. So if I were to actually attempt to escape underneath Stephan right now, he's bearing his weight down, I'm here and I'm like, oh, I can't bridge. But once I disconnect, I'm gonna go, and now I framed out enough to start getting something back in.
And you've created the room to get this knee in between you and I.
Yeah, and I mean, for someone that's on top, I think that feeling of being popped off a few times is probably a lot more, just uncomfortable and sort of makes you feel a little bit insecure when you're on top, because it's not a stagnant energy. You don't know when it's coming. You don't know what their timing is going to be like.
Also, bringing your knees up against my body kind of limits my ability to mount.
Right. And again, you always want to keep your partner thinking about a couple different things. You don't want your partner in a situation where they're thinking, I've got cross-side, haha, now I'm going to go knee on belly and mount. If you can give them some sort of a distraction, if you will, like you said, make them think about, okay, well, their legs are touching my body. I don't think I can go for a clean mount here. It's a really good thing to do.
Can you show that another angle?
Yeah. So guys, again, your arms are flattened out. This is a bad scenario. I need to make space here in order to make a frame. So right now, Stephan's controlling my head and I'm looking to the complete opposite side. This is not good for me, right? So in order to go this way, what I want to do is put my intention towards his hips, and I want to make a little bit of a body movement to tuck my elbow in, and I want to make this motion of circling my arm in front of his face. It's not pretty. You might give your partner a little bit of ghee burn if they're being really jerky about it, but gotta roll with the punches. So we're here, and I want to go ahead and circle and windshield wiper in. Now again, here I'm still caught underneath my partner, and it's very uncomfortable. But I'm gonna bring my knees up, right? And Stephan's still just trying to hold me, and he's ultimately thinking about, can I go knee on belly or can I go to mount, right? So I want to be ready to block this. So I already have my knee and my elbow in tight. But if he's on top here and I have my legs ready to go, I'm ready to explode. And that's the space that I need. Big difference from this. And that's me really trying to push, but I'm so connected that the energy is just flowing from the floor into my body right into Stephan. So I want to push. I get some space, but not a lot. So again, we're here and we want to explode into the mat. Multiple times, like if your partner's really heavy, you're going to go. And eventually, you're going to get something back.
That was not a gimme.
Yeah, it didn't move me.
So again, it's that element of surprise, right? When you're exploding into your partner, it's happening once, but it's also happening 2, 3, 4 times. That's what you have to be prepared
People
for.
expect the one bridge, they don't expect 2 and 3.
Exactly. They don't expect 2 and 3, and they certainly don't expect that 2 and 3 are going to be as strong as they are. When your feet are rooted onto the mats, you're going to get 1, but the second and third might be sort of like the aftershock, right? With this one, you want to hit your partner multiple times with a really strong force. So the last technique that I kind of want to go through here is this idea of if you're stuck in side control and you're not actually able to bridge your arms back in, there's other ways that you can use that bridging motion to make space, but it's keeping things in tight, right? It looks a little bit like this. So
Your arms are totally out of position.
my arms are out of position, and again, I'm sort of in a terrible, this isn't an ideal place to be, right? So we're having a little bit of difficulty coming in, right, and framing here all the way. Maybe our arms get trapped here, right, and it's a little bit snug, and I don't have the ability to bridge and move around all that well. So another alternative that you have here is, again, you want to still use this idea of bridging, but we're going to roll more side to side, okay? So what I want to think about is, as opposed to bridging here to circle the arms back in, I'm bridging here, and I want to think about rolling this way and rolling that way, right? Now, Stephan's giving me a little bit of sway there. The movements or the space that he's going to give you is going to be a little bit more incremental, right? So the idea is we want to turn one way, turn the other way. Turn one way, turn the other way. So as I start bridging, and I'm able to rock him back and forth, I'm going to try and sneak my hand from the outside to the inside. It's not that much space, right? So we're just bridging this way, bridging that way, bridging this way, and I just step my hand back in. From here, I can start to make a little bit of pressure on this shoulder and then go and circle that other arm back in. So I'm really tight. And then I want to make a little bit of a frame here, and I'm going to go ahead and think about bridging, escaping my hips, and driving my knee back in. All right, so we're here. I can't quite get everything back inside. So I want to go ahead and bridge one direction, bridge the opposite direction. The idea of doing this multiple times is something that you're really going to have to get used to, right? So I'm here, here, here. Bridge. Now I have my hand inside. When I come back down, I make a little bit of a frame. Frame, frame. Then I'm going to bridge my hips away and shoot back. And I can either get back to the regular guard or I can go in for a half guard.
So what I'd like you to do is to talk a little bit about where your arms are making contact with me, because you're actually clubbing me in the head. You're a big brute. And I'm not sure that our audience appreciates the pain that I'm going through for their learning.
All right. So like I said, we're having problems getting our elbow in and our arm in front. So I want to actually sort of make a chopping motion, if you will, with my hands. And in effect, my bicep will club him in the back of the head. So I want to stay a little tight here. And when I move, I'm going to bridge. And I'm forcing him over using my bicep and my shoulder. And then when I go back the opposite way, it's the same thing, but to the like I'm coming up into his armpit. So I come back down and bridge this way. So I'm hooking him in two very strange places. But the reality is, it's head and arm control, right? So anytime you hold somebody from on top, you're looking for head and arm control. So from the bottom, I'm essentially doing the same thing, except I'm using all this space up here to help me get to where I want to go, right? So remember, you want to stay a little tight here. You don't want to have your arm out here and missing his head. You want to sort of be on the back of the neck and the armpit.
So it's kind of a Team America World Police panic signal.
Or what is it, the bushwhacker, right? So you want to have this like motion of being able to move your arms opposite direction, right? And keeping tight.
While bridging.
Yeah, while bridging. So
The bushwhacker.
the bushwhacker on the floor. Try it at home a few times. Somebody's gonna laugh at you, whatever. So to go along with this idea of not getting there if you can help it, we want to talk about going from cross-side to mount. Again, this is something we don't want our partners to do. Self-defense scenario, terrible idea to have somebody mounted on top of you. They could pretty much have you at will, right? From a jiu-jitsu scenario, sport-wise, 4 points. That's a lot of points. You don't want that to happen. From an MMA scenario, somebody's going to ground and pound. Again, not happy. So we want to think again about preventing our partner from being able to get into a full mount. Don't just think about, oh, I know some good mount escapes. Mount escapes are great, but the idea is we don't want to have to use them, right? So when I'm already in cross-side, I want to be prepared for what Stephan's attack is going to be. So when we're looking at this position here, Stephan's intention is that he wants to think about climbing over and advancing the position, if you will, right? So when I'm already in this position of thinking, okay, I'm stuck in cross-side, he's not going to stay here for the rest of the match, he's going to try and do something else. I already want to be prepared. And some of the things that you should really be thinking about is keeping your elbows and knees to yourself. And although that sounds really polite, it's also a matter of preventing your partner from taking everything away from you. So I'm going to always try and keep my frame and my elbows tucked in tight. And with my knees, I always want to have my knees slightly aware of where Stephan's body is. Because ideally, when he goes to maybe switch his hips, and then maybe he wants to think that he's going to come mount, if you notice right here, I've already inserted my knee and stopped him from being able to take over a full mount. Okay? So from a slight, yeah, because that's not fun. So from a slightly different angle so you can sort of see the knee catch. We're here. He's going to go ahead and start trying to mount. I already want to block him. So my knee and my elbow are touching, and I'm already thinking about preventing him from coming fully over my body. Once I've hooked him here, I'm going to go ahead and take my bottom leg, and I'm going to trap it on top. And then from here, I have the underhook, and we're back into a half guard position, which is much better for you. If your partner's not careful, you'll probably hit their family jewels as well, right?
And she laughs.
So in this position where my leg is actually trapped underneath Stephan's mount, that's fine. You want to use this explosive energy. So take your hands, you have them framed out in front of you. You can keep them on your partner's rib cage, and then I'm just going to look to go sort of knee him in the butt and lift my leg up. Right? And here I come back into a butterfly or an open seated.
So in this next technique, we're looking at a situation where you weren't able to prevent your partner from actually mounting you. So you tried to put your knee or your elbow inside. Unfortunately, your partner outsmarted you or something happened. Maybe they manhandled you. Now you're on the bottom. So the thing about mount is there's a couple different ways that your partner can hold mount. They can go on a low mount. They might even decide that they want to go a little bit higher. In which case, when they go high, this is kind of a dangerous position. Your arms are very vulnerable here. And also your main defense, your hips, you're going to bridge and not do very much with your partner. Okay? So the start of this is really, it's a very basic fundamental technique in terms of mount escapes, but it's an oldie but a goodie. I use it all the time. It's something that's very, very successful. I want to, again, think about this idea of making a frame. So I don't want to let Stephan's hip continue to ride up my body, because then he's going to really isolate my arms, and then I'm going to be screwed. So I want to bring one forearm across his belt loop, and the other elbow, I don't want to have it on the outside. I want to tuck it in, just like I was saying before. So I want to start shifting my body a little bit to the side, and I'm going to bring my elbow in. Okay? As I do this, if your partner is a lot bigger than you, and you're not going to be able to push them down to your hips, you want to have this like wiggling motion that's very similar to maybe the shrimping drill that we do in the fundamental drill techniques. You want to be able to wiggle your body up, right? So you're going to be planting your feet on the mat and slowly wiggling your body up.
while framing and pushing down on your partner's hips. Once I'm here, Stephan is now sitting on top of where all my power is generated, which is my hips. This is much better for me. So from here, if Stephan wants to stand tall, he's going to be a little off balance. That's great. He has a lot of weight and sway there. So the first thing I want to do is think about how I'm going to be able to make him base out a little bit. So I'm going to just do a slight knee to the back of his lower back or his butt, right? And then he's planted his hands on the mat. From here, I have my elbow slightly tucked in on the inside. I don't want Stephan's thighs to make direct contact with my hips, right? So if I can keep one elbow on the inside, that's great because it gives me a little bit of space to work with. From here, I want to think about bridging and getting on my side. And I'm at this angle, one leg is posted up, the other leg is flat, okay? The reason why I want it flat is because from here, I'm actually going to think about bringing my knee up to my elbow. I maintain this frame, but from here, I can now trap his leg, come under for the underhook. This hand is now, I'm going to rock like a boat. My whole body's going to turn to the opposite side. I'm going to make sure that I frame his knee so it doesn't come up high, and then I'm going to pull my knee through and re-guard. All right, so from this other angle, a little bit more of a profile view, Stephan's going to already start to assume the high mount. Bad position, right? So we need to think about making his hips sit on top of my hips. I'm going to go ahead and start making that frame. And when I make that frame, guys, remember, you want to try and get this elbow on the inside. If it's stuck all the way out here, there's no power, there's no leverage, right? So from here, I'm going to make a little bit of a shifting movement similar to that shrimp. And now I've tucked my elbow in. He's still not directly on top of my hips, so I want to start wiggling my body up if I'm a little bit smaller than him, right? To make sure that they're pushed down. From here, I want to go ahead and thinking about bridging and making Stephan base his weight out on top of me. So from here, I kick him, right? And now I'm going to start shifting to my side. So I'm here, and once I've shifted to my side, notice my elbow's still in tight. My inside leg is now flat, and I have this leg planted on the floor to help push off. What I want to do is I want to bring my flat leg close to the floor, and I'm going to bring my knee up to my elbow. From here, I'm going to rock like a boat. I have an underhook here that I'm going to take, and I'm also going to trap this leg. So I'm going to rotate towards the other side, and then from here, I trap this leg, and then I'm going to frame out and pull my other knee through back to the guard. So I have a couple other details that I want to share with you so that we're just clear on everything. If you notice the position of my legs when Stephan's mounted on top of me, a lot of us, again, we learn technique this way, and we habitually start to pull our knees up and bring our heels towards our butt. This is great in terms of being able to bridge, right? But the reality is when we're actually playing, Stephan has now access to come underneath and scoop my legs. Whether he's going to grapevine or have some sort of opposite type of mount, or you're going to link his feet together like this makes it hard for me to bridge because now he's locked my hips down. To avoid this from happening, what you want to be able to do is think about at least keeping one leg flat on the mat or even two until you're ready to move, right? There's really no danger here because if your partner wants to dismount, that's great for you. But otherwise, you want to be able to keep this flat so that if your partner tries to sneak a leg through, they actually can't. The other thing I want to mention is that we have a difference in motion between shrimping, right? Where we're actually posting hard, getting on our side and pushing our hips away. And then there's also something that looks a little bit more like a shoulder shuffle. So when Stephan's actually mounted on top of me and I'm looking to push him back down my hips, when I frame, I'm not doing a full shrimp. I'm actually just walking my shoulders back, okay? So just keep those two motions clear, that when you're trying to move up and away from somebody, you want to frame, give yourself a point of reference, but that you're planting your feet and rolling your shoulders back so that you get into a more comfortable position.
So something I'm noticing here is as you're moving your knee out to the side to lighten my foot up, because I have my foot tucked, it puts just a tiny bit of strain on my knee. It's not going to damage it, but it sure gets my attention. If I was trying to choke you up here, all of a sudden I'm going, uh-oh, I better pay attention to that.
Right.
And I might stop doing whatever I'm doing
Yeah,
here.
so again, it's that idea of distracting your partner a little bit. It's annoying, right? It's a bit of a feeling that has you worried. So when you're thinking about extending your partner's leg, it's not just functional in terms of what I want to do, but it's also functional in terms of making you think, man, something else is going on here and I better be careful.
There's just the tiniest little tweak on the inside of the knee. Let's see what this looks like at speed.
Okay.
So the next technique, this is probably my favorite way to escape the mount. It's still very basic again, it's nothing too fancy, but what I like about it is it's sort of using a lot of diagonals with the body and you're pulling things in to places that they might not otherwise go. And it's again, it's an oldie but a goodie. It's something that always works and is very practical, easy to do. So from this position, what I want to think about doing is Stephan's in mount, okay? I've got him on top of my hips, but the regular bridging motion isn't working. So I'm here and I want to bridge him over. He's not really moving that much. So one of the things that I like to do from here is, again, this elbow being tucked in, that never changes. But what I want to do is I want to try and shift to my side a little bit. I may not be able to move Stephan a lot, but I can certainly try to move myself a little bit, right? So as opposed to being flat on my back, I want to bridge and just come to sort of like a slight angle to the floor, maybe about 45 degrees. You don't want to come too far over because then you expose your back and you can get your back taken, right? That was definitely a mistake of mine for many years. So we're here. I'm slightly angled towards the floor. Again, my inside leg is flat. My other leg, this time, instead of doing a regular knee elbow, I'm just going to take my outside leg and I'm going to reach across. So I'm reaching my far leg over and across to trap Stephan's leg. From here, Stephan's foot is light because his weight is in his knees because he's trying to stay on top of me. So I'm going to hook his foot and pull it over my knee. And from here, I have a little bit easier time doing the knee elbow, right? So I've pushed his knee over. Now again, I'm going to go in for the underhook, switch my base to the other side. And from here, I like to start in half guard and possibly work into something else, right? So from here, I've now assumed the underhook. I've trapped the leg. You know, from here I can go back into one of the sweeps or escape out the back like we did earlier in the disc. So again, Stephan's seated on top of my hips. I have my legs so that he can't come underneath me and grapevine, right? I'm thinking about framing and I'm going to bring my elbow on the inside. The important detail here, guys, is again, when we're trying to bridge, if you're finding that your partner is really tough to move, don't worry about them, think about yourself, right? I can't move Stephan, but I can certainly try to move myself a little bit. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and try and bridge just a little bit so I can get on my side and I'm not flat on my back, right? This is all that I need. I don't want to overextend myself and expose my back. I just want to stay at a slight angle to the floor. This leg right here, it's still on the inside. It's flat, which is great. A little detail that we want to remember is if your partner is really tucking their foot in close to you, one of the things that you can do to make it easier to trap this leg is to actually walk this foot out just a little bit. Now that I've pushed my knee out, it makes Stephan's foot way more accessible to me so that when I throw my leg over and trap it, it's already there. So now I'm going to go ahead and scoop the leg because it's light, and then I'm going to go for the knee elbow. And then once I come here, I'm going to look for the underhook, and I'm going to push my body, rock like a boat to the other side. And I've blocked the knee. I can assume the half guard position here, or like I said, you can swing out. But if you want to go back to the regular guard, you can come here. And I can come up to a seated guard.